in the city of Winnipeg. For today, we're going to have a sunny, breezy day, kind of similar to the last few, a little calmer with the winds today than yesterday, but our high is going to be right around -2. We are on air with you till 8:37 a.m. with the morning show. Let's say good morning to the team today. So Abby Adiyemi is going to be directing the show. Pat Kanuga is also directing the show. Pat Kanuga is also going to be hosting part of the show. I'll explain that in a moment. Good morning to May McKillop, who's behind the controls of the program this morning. Good morning to Travis Peterson, who's behind our information radio and CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. And out of our house, but over in the news center, Heather Wells is here too. It's a big day, lots of news happening, both locally and nationally, and she's here with headlines.
Good morning. We are learning more about the hockey coach facing 15 charges, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. Winnipeg School Division confirms Madison Baluk worked as a sessional on-ice instructor at Churchill Hockey Academy during October and November of 2022. Several months before, Baluk was the head coach of the under-18 AA Rocky Mountain Raiders based in Okotoks. CBC obtained a letter from 6 families with concerns about some of Baluk's behavior. Now, none of these charges have been proven in court. We're going to hear more on this story coming up. We're also going to hear some reaction to what is happening in the Middle East as a ceasefire now is in effect, allowing some hostages to be released. We're going to hear what local people here in Winnipeg have to say about this in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It is a big morning, of course, in the development there. So in a couple of hours during the show, in fact, we'll be watching what is happening. And we are potentially going to see some hostages on both sides being released. So we'll see what happens this morning. Locally, I mentioned that Pat's going to be hosting part of the show. I'm off after 7 o'clock to the light breakfast today at the Ukrainian Labour Temple on Pritchard. So it'll be good to see you there and learn more about local investment toward employment and their ongoing work for years in the community. This is their 26th annual. But in the first hour, we're going to hear how you feel about the NDP's temporary lift on the provincial tax on fuel. Stay tuned for that. Right now, World Report.
Today on Q with Tom Power. On the 30th anniversary of their legendary album, 5 Days in July, Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler from the band Blue Rodeo will tell you the story how a road-weary rock band found refuge in an Ontario farmhouse and created a Canadian masterpiece. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. Aid trucks carrying fuel and cooking gas have started to enter Gaza. 13 Israeli hostages are due to be freed in the coming hours, and after that, 39 Palestinians are expected to be released from Israeli prisons. The cessation of hostilities is in effect in southern Gaza, but as Briar Stewart tells us, Palestinians have been warned against traveling north.
In southern Gaza, people are on the move, on foot and in cars loaded with whatever personal belongings they have. The pause in fighting means that those who live in the south and have been displaced can return to their neighborhoods, but those from the north cannot return. Israel's military dropped leaflets warning Palestinians that the north of Gaza is still a war zone and going there is prohibited.
This place, there is an unmistakable tension.
James Elder is with UNICEF and has recently arrived in Gaza, where health officials say more than 14,000 people have been killed in the past 7 weeks.
They need, of course, a respite from the bombardment, but people here are desperate. There is an absolute need for people to get their most basics, starting with water.
The United Nations Refugee Agency for Palestinians says it will try to bring aid to the north. But another aid group told CBC News that it's been told staff won't be able to access the tens of thousands of residents still in and around Gaza City. Meanwhile, in Israel, the families of 13 of the hostages are preparing to be reunited, while other families are waiting to be told whether or not their loved ones will be on the list for release. After the first group of hostages has been freed, 39 Palestinians, 24 women and 15 teenage boys will be released from Israeli prisons and returned to their homes in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Tel Aviv.
The agreement between Israel and Hamas is the result of weeks of negotiations. Global powers like the U.S. have been engaged, but involvement from the Gulf state of Qatar has been pivotal. Abby Kugadasan reports.
A small nation playing a big role on the world stage, Qatar has positioned itself as a mediator, this time between the U.S., Israel, and Hamas.
I think it's played an essential role.
Arif Lalani is a former Canadian ambassador to several countries, including Iraq and Afghanistan. He says Doha has been vital because it can speak to actors the West avoids contacting directly.
This pause in the fighting could not have happened if there wasn't a place to go to speak to Hamas, or a country that allowed us to indirectly communicate with them.
But Qatar has been pressured by both the U.S. and Israel to condemn Hamas and criticized for hosting senior Hamas officials for years. With Israel, Doha maintains low-level ties, not official ones. Its emir has previously said Qatar will not normalize relations until peace is achieved between Israel and the Palestinians. For the Gaza Strip, Qatar has sent about $10 million monthly for years. The money helps fund UN food rations and partially pay public sector workers like doctors and teachers. Lalani says these negotiations are a start.
Security is never assured only by focusing on security. There has to be a political framework.
Several Muslim countries have called for a permanent ceasefire and steps towards a two-state solution for an enduring peace. Abby Kualdasan, CBC News, Berlin.
The exact number of Americans kidnapped by Hamas is not clear. More than 70 have been missing since the October 7th attacks, with some reports saying at least 10 are being held as hostages. Some of them are to be released today. And with more on all of this, let's go to Richard Madden, CBC's correspondent in Washington. Richard, what can you tell us about the Americans being released?
Yeah, there are early reports from the White House that says 3 Americans, 2 women and a girl, are expected to be among those released, including the youngest American hostage, 3-year-old Abigail Moriden. She was captured by Hamas after both her parents were murdered trying to flee their home in South Israel. Now, her American relatives are waiting anxiously for news of her release. Here's her great aunt, Liz Hirsch Naftali.
She's turning 4, and to just imagine that she comes home and is with her family is our light right now.
Now, Israeli troops have reportedly been instructed not to tell her that her parents were killed by Hamas. U.S. officials say once the American hostages are released, their families will be notified.
The stakes are high for the Biden administration in all of this, Richard. With the president himself engaging, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there are huge political ramifications for Biden, especially as we head into an election year. Polls suggest he's losing support, particularly among young Democrats, for his steadfast support for Israel, not so much for the Palestinians. Now, White House officials are careful not to call this vindication, but they say, look at these developments. They say it's proof Biden's quiet diplomacy is working.
Richard Madden in our Washington Bureau. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
And just a clarification there, more than 20 Americans have been reported missing since the October 7th attacks. Double amputee Paralympic runner Oscar Pistorius has been granted parole 10 years after shooting his girlfriend dead at his home in South Africa. He'll be released from prison on January 5th. Pistorius has been in prison since late 2014. He turned 37 this week and was given a second chance at parole after he was wrongly ruled ineligible at a first hearing in March. Pistorius was one of the world's most admired athletes when he shot Riva Steenkamp multiple times on Valentine's Day in 2013. Officials in Dublin are appealing for calm after a night of rioting. Protesters fired flares and fireworks at police. They burned vehicles and looted shops. 34 people were arrested, and officials are blaming Ireland's growing far right for fomenting the violence after a stabbing incident earlier in the day.
We asked people to act responsibly, not to listen to the misinformation and rumour that is circulating on social media. The facts are being established, and a lot of the rumour and innuendo is being spread for malevolent purposes.
Police Commissioner Drew Harris says his officers need time to investigate why a man stabbed several young children outside a school yesterday. Protesters showed up at the crime scene shouting anti-immigration slogans after it was revealed the suspect was a naturalized Irish citizen who had lived in the country for more than 10 years. Those protests grew in size and the rioting went from there. Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs is being accused of drugging and sexually assaulting a university student in 1991. That's part of a lawsuit filed in a New York court, and the second suit filed against Combs in a week. The complaint is among a flurry of lawsuits filed this week under New York's Adult Survivors Act. Court papers also filed accusing New York Mayor Eric Adams of sexual assault in the 1990s. The act created a year-long suspension of the statute of limitations to sue over alleged sexual assaults. That was ahead of the law's expiry, which is today. In its fiscal update, the Liberal government said it was looking for billions of savings, but a Fifth Estate investigation has discovered Ottawa is doing little to stop the losses of hundreds of millions of dollars through scams run by international fraudsters. They're called carousel schemes. Experts say the government was warned to put in safeguards but failed to act. Bob McEwen reports.
I feel livid that this is happening in Canada.
UK fraud expert Mike Cheatham is a man with a mission. He says Ottawa must take responsibility for not doing more to prevent your tax dollars from being stolen.
Why are you here in the United Kingdom trying to trace these criminals down?
Cheatham is talking about carousel schemes, where tech-savvy fraudsters from outside Canada set up a series of bogus transactions inside the country. The scammers then claim GST refunds for taxes never paid in the first place.
I believe that the fault here is with the tax authority, and your tax system is wide open for this fraud.
Court documents obtained by the Fifth Estate reveal the Canada Revenue Agency has repeatedly been tricked into paying out tens of millions of dollars. The CRA admits it's identified $1.1 billion related to carousel schemes since 2017.
Huge global organized crime. You're the target.
Danish journalist Bo Elkjær says European governments have done far more to crack down on these crimes. But Canada is just not doing enough.
They found places where they are not yet being investigated and haunted by the authorities, and that would be Canada.
Federal Revenue Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau declined an interview. In a statement, the CRA said they've made significant investments in detecting carousel schemes, and that they aim to prevent and address them as early as possible. Bob McEwen, CBC News, Toronto.
The full investigation, Swindling the System, airs tonight on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television at 9 p.m., 9:30 in Newfoundland, on CBC Gem, or streams this afternoon on YouTube. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. We made it to Friday after a week where we're all getting used to the chill in our bones, I think, again. In Winnipeg today, our high is -2. Pat's in with a full look at our forecast in a second. I'm Marcy Markusa with our team here at CBC. Thanks for joining us in the morning show. 89.3 FM as mentioned, 9:90 a.m. on the app or on our YouTube channel as well. Good morning, YouTubers. This hour on the program, we are going to celebrate. We have a happy story coming up. A Bison football player has received a National Student Athlete Community Service Award. He has deep roots in athletics in his family and deep roots in the community. So we'll hear all about his work when we talk to him. He's the fourth Bison to win this award. In addition, this hour on the program, adoptive parents are finally getting equal time off work compared to birth parents. CBC's Blair Sanderson has reaction from those who have been pushing for the change. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who has local news headlines and on an update. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, as we heard on World Report, that 4-day pause in fighting in the Middle East is now underway. No fighting between Israel and Hamas to allow for aid to get in and some hostages to be released. We'll hear more through the morning, but we can tell you the president of the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg welcomes the ceasefire. Gustavo Zentner says it's a time to reflect on the value of human life. Zelina Zeid, a Palestinian Canadian in Winnipeg, wants a complete ceasefire. She says we don't need a pause. We need it to end. So we'll hear more from them coming up. Winnipeg City Council has voted to change zoning bylaws, thanks in part to a promise of $192 million in federal housing funds. Council voting for changes to fast-track higher density housing. River Heights Fort Garry councillor John Orlico was one of 3 councillors who voted against the changes. He calls it terrible for neighbourhoods. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So that vote, of course, yesterday in council on the heels of a whole bunch of conversation this week. We had multiple interviews looking at housing and density. Also, the listener line was full with people on all sides of the issue with different perspectives as we asked you what's the way forward. I should mention that we're going to have another conversation in this hour, an interview about housing. This one, looking back at what was announced by the feds this week in their fiscal statement, their fall fiscal statement, it did include some measures for housing. We're going to get a viewpoint on those proposed measures coming up from a national perspective. So we had some local guests on the Airbnb aspects, but we'll talk more about it. It's needed everywhere. Pat Kanuga is in to talk about the weather, as always. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I am very well this morning. Happy Friday.
I'm great. I get to leave and eat pancakes.
I know. You get to leave. Thanks. I'll try and try not to run amok with your show at 7:10 when I take over as host.
Okay. The public show.
The public show, yes.
Right. And then our show. But
Thank you.
Don't ruin it.
Don't screw it up, Pat. Okay.
Okay, this is my push for light. Local investment toward employment. This is the grassroots of the grassroots. How many times do you hear somebody, Pat, over the years say, I'm ready, I'm to be employed, I'm at a place in my life, but everywhere I go, they say, what experience do you have?
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience? Sometimes life circumstances get in the way of people being able to sort of get up on that first rung to gain experience and then move on from there in their lives and support their families. I mean, we need to work. People need to work. So this is
that.
This is exactly that. Been around in our community for many years. This is the 26th breakfast, and they raise money for all the programs and resources that they do to help people. I love that it's at the Labour Temple. I mean, jobs, home of labor in Winnipeg. One of the places in Winnipeg where the labor movement was so important. So the Ukrainian Labour Temple, 591 Pritchard. If you want to join us, the breakfast is from 8 until 11 this morning.
2 words, blueberry pancakes.
Yeah, I know. You've got to say that a couple times because they are really good. The weather today.
Let's see here. So I'm getting used to this wind chill. Yesterday afternoon, I was doing some work outside, and boy, it was nippy out there with that breeze. So it's still going to be a little bit breezy and sunny today. Daytime high of -2. We're at a -11 right now in the downtown at the Forks. So we'll see that -2. Wind's going to pick up this afternoon. Southwest, 20 to 40. At least that's the right direction. Those northwest breezes are so cold, but southwest, so that's going to warm us up to a -2 this afternoon. Tonight, we'll dip down to a -10, a chilly one overnight. And John says we could see 2 to 3 centimeters of snow into Sunday here in the Peg and parts of southern Manitoba. He says it's going to get really cold around 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then by Sunday morning we'll wake up to a -4, but then the temperature falls to about -9 by 3 in the afternoon on Sunday as well. So a couple of phenomenons there. And then Sunday afternoon could be very windy as well, northwest 30 to 50. And then into next week, we're still at -single digits, so a -6 for Monday and -4 for Tuesday. John's got a 0 way off in the distance. John Sodders, whom I'm talking about, our meteorologist here at CBC Manitoba. But again, this is pretty mild because it could be a lot colder at this time of year. Once again, in the downtown, we're at -11, -16 in Brandon on the way to a -3, and Thompson, you're -10 with some drifting snow and a high of -2. Quickly in traffic, 788-3093 is the traffic and commuter line. No reports at 6:15 in the morning of stalls or crashes, but I am standing by at that number.
Well, the U Sports Football All-Canadian and Awards dinner took place last night, and Mark Rauhaus took home the Russ Jackson Award, which makes the Bisons one of the top receivers to get the award. The award focuses on community service, but on top of being a great athlete, Mark also excels in his studies. So Mark Rauhaus, I'm so focused on your last name, I called you Mike, is with us this morning. Hello there.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. I clearly need more coffee. How was it? How was it last night to be awarded this? What was it like?
It was a truly wonderful experience. Queens has shown a lot of great hospitality to us. There were so many great people who came up to talk to me at the banquet. So many great players. A lot of really important and really like esteemed coaches out there too. It was a really cool experience.
You've done a lot of work, and I was reading about your work specifically with New Directions. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that was it was a really great experience last summer. It all started off with the President Student Leadership Program based out of U of M with the James Burns Leadership Institute, where they brought students from all across Manitoba, and I was really fortunate to be selected as one of them to come in. It started off with a core week where we met a lot of really influential people across Manitoba who gave their words of advice, gave their time for Q&As for these young students trying to learn about how to lead and how to better lead the communities that they serve. And then after that kind of core week, we set off in teams with goals of making meaningful and sustainable change throughout the community. And my group found ourselves with New Directions, who gave us a great shot at making that meaningful change.
Yeah, please continue. Tell us more about your work with New Directions.
Yeah, so New Directions has this awesome supported independent living program where it's really like a case-by-case basis for people with special needs transitioning to independent living. And my group, we addressed a need in that program to work in an integrated life skills workshop to hopefully equip these individuals with tools to keep them successful in today's society.
What I love about this is you go to this, you learn about this, you start meeting, as you said, with people and hearing the needs. Some people might leave and then say, share that message, but you actually work to help formulate a financial skills curriculum, because you were talking there, as you just mentioned, about the practical things that people just were sharing with you that they needed. What was it that made you say, I have the ability to help with the next step here?
It all goes back to how I grew up. My grandma and my mom, they really taught me the importance of empathy. And, I come from a very privileged place. I've never had to worry too much about my needs being met. And, I'm just being a student athlete too. It gives me such a great position and such a great platform to be able to branch out and give back and pay it forward.
Did something about New Directions and the supportive program for people living with intellectual and physical disabilities speak to you personally?
Well, 100%. I have a brother, James, who has autism, and I've seen firsthand the challenges that he faces, and some of the programs within Manitoba, the ups, and then of course the downs, and some of the lacking aspects of these support systems. So there's still lots of need. There's still lots of work to do, and I was just really happy to go and be able to address that a little bit, and kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction.
You're, Mark, as I mentioned, the fourth Bison to win this award, which ties with two other universities for the most all-time wins across the country. What does that say to you about, Bison players, about Manitobans?
We have so many amazing people on our team. Coming into the program, there was guys like DJ Lama, Derek Defoe, a guy like Colby Kylik too, a guy like Derek. He was a Can West Jackson Award recipient, I believe 2 times when I first joined the program, and he was pretty much a role model. Like Coach Dobie did a great job of pointing out him and the things that he does. I know there's always been these really great figures in Bison sports. It truly, U of M really does provide us with great opportunities to do work. And I'm definitely by no means a trailblazer. There's been a lot of great people before me, and I was just trying to follow in their shoes, and I find myself doing the work that I do.
You're also, though, a busy student, and you're an athlete, obviously excelling. How do you manage to get it all in and do the community work as well?
A lot of my values, a lot of I guess my work ethic per se. It's I invest a lot in the groups and the things that I do, and the difference between sports, like academics, and community work I feel like the big difference in all of it keeps my mind fresh. So when I bounce from one thing to another, it's a new challenge. It's a new opportunity to go in and put some work in. But yeah, it's definitely busy. Sometimes time is tough to find, but time management is an incredibly important skill. I've learned that the hard way. And kind of as I keep getting older, as I've spent more time in university, I've been able to hone that in and kind of just make everything work. It's a pretty complex puzzle, but it's worth taking the time and energy to kind of sort it all out.
I'm looking at a picture of you and your father holding your trophy. People might know your name, Mark Rawhouse, also because Bison Sports runs deep in your family. But for those who don't, can you talk a bit more about that?
Oh, for sure. Just within U of M alone, like my grandpa came to coach the Bison football team back in the 90s. My dad and my aunt actually were athlete of the year in the same year. My dad was also a national award winner for U Sports. He won Lineman of the Year, the JP Metros Trophy, back in his heyday. And just like the stories that I've heard growing up, he's always been a really big motivator and supporter in my sports career, whether it was hockey or football or whatever else I try to get my hands on. But yeah, it was really special being able to, I guess, kind of leave my stamp in the Rawhouse legacy with not just Bison Sports, but like U Sports football as well. We found my dad's plaque on the JP Metros, and I think there's a really good photo of us each holding our respective trophy back at the banquet last night, and it really did mean a lot to have him out here. Like, there are a lot of people coming up and saying, like, they played with my dad, they really respected him as a player. He was kind of catching up with a bunch of people at that banquet too. It was cool.
I love that your whole family has given so much to community and to sport. I was just looking at the picture of you and your dad holding the trophy, and it's really, really cool. They must be so proud of you. Congratulations on this, Mark. Thanks again for being up early and telling us, sharing a little bit of the experience with us, and all the best in what you're going to do next. What are your plans? Just let's talk football for a second here. What's your next big goal? Like, what are you dreaming about on the athletic front?
On the athletics front, I'm a biochemistry co-op student, so I have a few work terms left in my degree. So I guess kind of short term, I'm starting a position with Health Canada within their existing chemical risk assessment bureau, which like the past health research that I've done has always been more exploratory. So this position is going to allow me to take kind of more like a policy analysis role, which I think is really cool and really interesting. But kind of looking long term, I'm going to be writing my MCAT this summer and applying for the 2025 I don't have the years right in my head, but yeah, I'm going to be my goal coming into university, like ever since high school, is to apply to med school. So I'm going to be writing my MCAT this summer and going through the next application cycle. I
have no doubt that you'll do whatever you put your mind to. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Congrats again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mark Rawhouse talking to us this morning, Bison football player, last night receiving the Russ Jackson Award. Russ Jackson, of course, now I think some 87 years old, but played with the Ottawa Rough Riders in the CFL for many years in the 60s and 70s and did a great deal of community service work. So Mark Rawhouse receiving the award last night, the Russ Jackson Award for his work. It happened at the U Sports Football All-Canadian and Awards Dinner.
Frequencies with Errol Nazareth. The world is alive with sound, whether across the street or across the pond, from back home or in your own backyard. Every place has a sound and every person has a story. Discover songs and stories from people and communities across Canada and around the world. Frequencies with host Errol Nazareth. Episodes available on demand on the CBC Listen app.
6:26 a.m., -11 in Winnipeg. The high today is -2 with lots of sunshine. We see you, Rodney Martel. Good morning, watching on our YouTube channel. And we hear you, all those listeners that are calling us as well. And you were calling yesterday when Premier Wab Kinew brought a bill to temporarily lift the provincial sales tax on fuel. So you're going to start saving money across Manitoba at gas pumps in the new year. It means people will save 14 cents a litre at pumps starting January 1st. And as I mentioned yesterday on Up to Speed, the listener lines were thrown wide open and you were calling to tell us what you thought about it.
Hi, it's Greg Boucher from Winnipeg. I think that the heart of the NDP government is definitely in the right place, but I don't know that this is the most effective thing. I think it undermines climate change initiatives. It also gives a discount to everyone, which is not necessarily people who actually need the discount the most. It gives the discount to large corporations who have been gouging Manitobans and doesn't necessarily focus on those the most in need. Perhaps a discount on food items, and in particular fresh food, vegetables, meat, fruits would be far more appropriate, or something that actually targets the lowest earners in our province.
Hi, my name's Doug. I don't think it's a wise choice for everybody in Manitoba. Paying less for gas doesn't discourage use of fuels. I would rather see the funds that might have been available spent to help homeless people who have mental problems who are not being dealt with.
This is Ross Martin. I believe they should have used that money to invest in transit. By giving a tax rebate for motorists, we're continuing to allow people to drive their individual vehicles rather than using mass transit in the city of Winnipeg, the city of Brandon, Thompson. I think it would do more good in helping people.
Hi, my name is Julie Geisel. It's the same old with Wab Canoe. He does the same thing that the PC government does federally. I'm going to cut this, like cutting the GST. They also destroyed social programs. So when Wab Canoe is cutting the gas tax, what social programs is he going to eliminate in order to pay for that cut? And it doesn't really bother me directly because I don't drive. I'm 71 years old and I've never driven. I always take the bus or a cab or walk, or maybe bus passes will go up or down.
Hi, Shane Mestruck. I totally agree that money should go to free transit. Those are the people that need it, and that is what the system should be doing, providing people that need transportation free transportation. But I do have a comment. Do they really think a few cents on a liter is going to make a difference?
So lots of different thoughts and perspectives on what was announced yesterday, the bill coming in to temporarily lift the provincial sales tax on gas. Listeners talking about it, and you can too. Weigh in at 788-3205. And if you want to read more about it, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, speaking of all things money, we have the business report coming up. There's a new forecast out for home prices over the next couple of months, so we're going to hear more about that. In addition, we're going to have news about Apple today. We're going to get some insight into who could lead the tech giant next. So Kristalee Ramlakan's going to be in with that with us after the CBC News at 6:30. We're getting close to that time now on our Friday morning here. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, anytime you want to weigh in on anything, 788-3205, just like those listeners on the gas tax, that's where you can connect with us. You can also connect with us on social media on our Information Radio and CBC Manitoba YouTube page and on my page, which during the show on Facebook, I use that as a show page. So I'm Marcy Markusa on Facebook and Insta. So maybe we'll talk to you there. Right now, it's time to hear from Heather Wells in our CBC Manitoba News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is -11. It's a chilly start to your Friday, but we are actually going to warm up above normal. A high today of -2. Lots of sunshine, bit of a southwest breeze today. The fighting between Israel and Hamas is on pause this morning. A 4-day ceasefire now in effect as Israeli tanks rolled out of Gaza. Intense fighting was reported almost to the last second, and the first trucks carrying fuel and other aid have been seen entering Gaza at the Rafah crossing. 200 trucks a day are expected to enter the territory during this truce. The World Food Programme is planning to deliver 1,300 tons during the pause, the first since the war began nearly 7 weeks ago. And the first hostage exchange is expected to start in just a couple of hours, starting with the release of 13 women and children being held by Hamas in Gaza. You can hear the latest on what's happening in the Middle East coming up on World Report at 7. Now here in Winnipeg, Selena Zeid, a Palestinian Canadian, wants to see a complete ceasefire.
Just a big slap in the face, just because a 4-day pause is nothing. Like, it's not going to help anyone. It's not going to help the people. We don't need a pause. We need it to end.
Gustavo Zentner at the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg welcomes this development. He says it's a time to pause and reflect on the value of human life above everything else. We are learning more about the hockey coach facing 15 charges, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. Winnipeg School Division confirms Madison Baluk worked as a sessional on-ice instructor at Churchill Hockey Academy during October and November of 2022. Months before that, Baluk was head coach for the under-18 AA Rocky Mountain Raiders based in Okotoks. CBC obtained a letter from 6 families with concerns about some of Baluk's behavior. The bodies in charge of the Okotoks team now confirm they have submitted the complaint letter to Hockey Canada's independent third body. Signe Arneson at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection says there needs to be more transparency around when red flags arise, even if it doesn't necessarily meet the threshold of something illegal having occurred.
If you're going to put someone in a position where they're overseeing children, those who are vulnerable, underage, then you need to have the proper systems in place to ensure that kids are protected. And we know that most of the conduct that's inappropriate doesn't hit a criminal threshold.
During Baluk's time as a coach in Manitoba, she worked for 2 elite hockey teams and volunteered as a high school basketball coach. None of the charges have been proven in court. City Council has voted to change Winnipeg's zoning bylaws, thanks in part to the promise of $192 million in federal housing funds. Council last night voting 13-3 in favor of the changes to fast-track higher density housing. It allows developers to build up to 4 units on a single lot and up to 4 stories near busy bus routes. In the end, Winnipeg City Council couldn't say no to that money, the $192 million. Transcona councillor Russ Wyatt voted in favor but takes issue with Ottawa's tactics.
I don't recall a time when a federal government has reached so far down into municipal corporations to demand that they do certain things to get certain amount one-time federal money. Is it fair to describe this really as political extortion?
The federal government says the changes are needed to increase the housing supply while promoting the development of affordable, diverse communities that are low carbon and climate resilient. There will be no more encores for a mainstay on Winnipeg's music scene. The owners of the Goodwill Social Club say they're shutting down after almost a decade on Portage Avenue. Amos Nadler-Smith fronts the Winnipeg band Amos and the Kid. He says the Goodwill played a huge role in his development.
It basically took me from playing house concerts and very small concerts to a room with 200-person capacity, which was it's just amazing.
The Goodwill is set to close its doors in February. The Manitoba Book Awards is taking a temporary pause to deal with some challenges. Manitoba's biggest night for books offers about 10 prizes every year, but its 2023-24 award cycle is going to be used instead to restructure. Donna Basil is a writer based in Lactabani. She says the awards can raise a book's profile.
It might get noticed. That means something to the writers. It means something to other writers. It means something to publishers when they see some book awards or any awards of any kind.
Authors who would have been eligible to apply for an award this year will be able to apply to next year's Manitoba Book Awards. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Pat Kanuga, it's time for a regional forecast. People wondering across Manitoba what the weekend's going to look like.
What's in store for the weekend? Well, sunshine. How's that? But some snow tomorrow night. I'll get into that in a second here in Winnipeg. I'm looking at satellite and radar imagery right now, satellite images, and clear and cold. We don't have much clouds in the entire bottom half of the province, really, for the most part. The sun rises at 7:53, so you'll see it then. And what are we going to get to today? Well, we're at a minus 11 right now in the downtown. We're going to get to a high of minus 2. John Sauter, meteorologist here at CBC Manitoba, says sunny, breezy, minus 2. Wind southwest 10 to 20 this morning, but it picks up this afternoon, southwest with gusts to 40 this afternoon. Tonight, clear, cold again, a minus 10 for the overnight. And then tomorrow's a minus 1, but tomorrow's interesting. John says we're going to really cool off by about 8, 9 at night, and a couple of centimeters of snow, 2 to 3 centimeters maybe into the overnight. That's what we'll wake up to. So the green grass might become a little bit more white by Sunday morning. And then we'll see a minus 4 for a daytime high. Cloudy Sunday morning, clearing in the afternoon, but then temperature falls to minus 9 by 3 o'clock. So if you're out and about on Sunday, it's going to get cool, downright cold, and blustery. Northwest winds to 50 in the morning, 20 to 40 in the afternoon. So it's going to be a chilly one on Sunday. Into next week, a minus 6 for Monday, a minus 4 for Tuesday. Over in Brandon, minus 16 right now, on the way to a minus 3. Gusty winds as well this morning, 30 to 50 from the southwest this morning. Right now, I have a wind chill of minus 24 with that minus 16. And again, we'll get to a high of minus 3 today, minus 13 tonight. Tomorrow for Brandon, sunshine and a minus 2. Slight chance of flurries in late afternoon tomorrow for Brandon. And Thompson, you have some drifting snow being reported right now, minus 10 on the way to a minus 2. Tonight dipping down to a minus 4, not bad. And tomorrow cloudy and a daytime high of minus 2, but could see 2 to 4 centimeters of snow beginning tomorrow morning for Thompson. Still up in the north, Churchill, you're minus 11, you're get to a minus 6 today. Everywhere else, Marcy, looking pretty good. Minus 1s, minus 2s, and mostly minus 3s in the following areas. Morden, Winkler, where it's minus 12 right now. Melitta's minus 16. Whiteshell is minus 12. And Gimli, Interlake, minus 12 as well. You'll see a minus 2. And Pilot Mound, Crystal City area, good morning to you, minus 15 on the way to a minus 3. So that's what's happening in weather. It's minus 11 once again in the downtown. The streets are dry, piece of cake as far as ice and things like that.
Right.
There is none of it on the roads, and everything seems to have melted on the sidewalks a lot as well.
But we haven't had any notification, Shaftesbury High School students, so you're going to be going today.
There is a day off today, yes.
Again?
Yep. So no, there is a PD day, Professional Development Day.
Oh, they lucked out then in a strange way because they had that incident with the water main break thing.
Yes. So
they were off because of that, and then today
right.
It's PD.
So James from Pembina Trail School Division yesterday said school, hopefully classes normal on Monday.
Got it.
There we go. So they got a 4-day weekend, Shaftesbury High School students. I will mention the traffic line 7883093 if there's anything going on in the streets of Winnipeg or the highways of Manitoba. I'm standing by at that number.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
It is time to connect with Crystalie Ramlakan, who's here via Zoom with our business report. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with the new forecast that's out about home prices over the next few months. So what are we predicting?
So TD Economics is predicting that Canadian home prices will fall even further than its previous forecasts. So the outlook says there is more potential for an even bigger correction in home prices. So economists are now forecasting a 10% drop in home prices, and that's up from the 5% drop they had expected in September. So part of the reason for this is a loosening in BC and Ontario's housing markets. There has been a sudden surge in supply in Ontario. And the report says that those two provinces usually experience different market conditions, and the rest of the country has benefited from tighter markets and better affordability. However, though, population growth could cushion prices from coming down. Now, even though the report is forecasting a sharper drop in prices, even after that decrease, the average home price would still be 15% higher than before the pandemic. And Marcy, the average price of a home across the country is about $758,000. Of course, that's skewed by places like BC, but on average, that's still a lot of money.
Yeah, it sure is. Let's move to news about Apple. Speaking of lots of money, I understand that we're getting some insight into who could lead the tech giant next.
Yes. So CEO Tim Cook says he's already thinking about who will eventually replace him. And he revealed that to singer Dua Lipa. And you might think, well, why would he do that? Well, she has a podcast, which I didn't know until yesterday. So she interviewed him on that. And he says he would like to see the person be from inside the company, and that his job is to prepare several people for the board to pick from.
I don't know how long I'll be there. I love it there. And I can't envision my life without being there. And so I'll be there for a while.
So there's no like succession plan that you've got?
Well, we're a company that believes in working on succession plans. And so we have very detailed succession plans because something that's unpredictable can always happen.
Now, we know that Cook succeeded Apple founder Steve Jobs in 2011, and at the time he did face speculation as to whether he could fill those shoes, but under his leadership, the company has released the Apple Watch, AirPods, expanded its line of iPhones, and crossed the $3 trillion market cap mark.
So I guess he's answered the question. He filled the shoes, it seems. More people are watching to another story now. Their wallets, of course, this holiday season, were people facing higher interest rates, inflation. What's proper etiquette for gift giving on a budget?
Well, we spoke to Julie Blake Como, who is an etiquette consultant and expert, and she says the first step is to talk frankly with your friends and family ahead of time and lay out the ground rules to accommodate everyone's financial situation. So whether that's a budget or saying things need to be homemade or thrifted. And thrift giving is a growing trend, especially for clothes and accessories. Blake Como says, you know your loved ones best. So if you see something that's perfect for them, feel free to grab it. Also, making something like a customized card with a collage of photographs can be more valuable than one from a store.
The one commodity that cannot be bought is time. And to say to a friend or a family member, I can do this for you, or I can help you with that, based upon the time that you have or the restrictions that you know that they have. How can you support them with your time and talent? And sometimes that will be a lot more valued than an object.
And Marcy, if you plan to regift, make sure it's something that the person is actually going to like instead of just passing it on for convenience. Also, try to keep your regifting worlds separate so people don't recognize the gift that they picked out for you going to someone else. And of course, if you're going to regift, make sure you change the name tag on the present or take it off.
The little thing that hangs on the gift bag that you forgot to rip off at the end.
Yes.
Right. What's going on in the markets?
So in Europe, markets are mixed after hitting a 9-week high. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed as investors assess inflation actually rising in Japan. So Japan is up, Shanghai and Hong Kong are both down. Oil is down 44 cents to 76.66 US per barrel. Gold is up $4.40 to $1,997.10 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 1/10 cent to 73.11 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee. Well, have a great weekend. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Thanks, Marcy. You too.
Crystal Lee Ramlakan with business news this morning. And I'm wondering what your best thrift or regift experience was. Did you receive something and then you learned after, but it was really great and you're like, this is the best? Or did you give something and it went over really well, and why? Let us know. 788-3205. 6:44 a.m. is the time right now, and I just want to nod to something because our listener line was full. Abby was super busy cutting listener lines this week. You're weighing in on all kinds of things, but one of them is transit. So in the next hour of Information Radio, because we heard so much from you about what it is like for you on the bus right now and what is not working for you. And yesterday we had a Winnipegger who is legally blind saying she's slow to get around with her cane, but she can walk somewhere faster then the bus can get her there. And she's tired of waiting. And she said they've been talking about changes for 10 years, and she's just wanting service to improve. She's not alone. So we are going to have Janice Lukes on this morning to look more at where we're at. We have heard we have a shortage in drivers. However, what happened to the master plan? What version of the master plan are we on? What's happening now with all of those routes and the promises to build rapid transit from each and every corner of the city? And what do we need to do between now and the ideal, which, as we've heard from councillors, end of next year, they're going to have this new plan in place. But what happens to all those people at the bus stop now that want better service? So Pat actually is going to have an interview with Janice Lukes coming up in the next hour to look more deeply at transit. Right now, parents of adopted children are celebrating a new federal measure that is not getting a lot of attention In this week's Fall Economic Statement, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland announced that people who adopt children will get the same amount of paid leave from work compared to those who gave birth. CBC's Blair Sanderson has this look at why adoptive parents have been fighting for this.
I now invite the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Even if you watched all of Chrystia Freeland's speech in the House of Commons, you might have missed the part about the government's plan to give adoptive parents an extra 15 weeks of leave following the arrival of their child. That part happened in French.
Because family, every family, no matter how it comes together, needs time to bond.
There are plenty of people who have been waiting for this to happen. Two of them were at the House of Commons and immediately posted this message to their supporters on Facebook.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for your writing letters and briefs and videos.
We're just so thrilled. Time to attach.
These are Kathy Murphy and Julie Despatie. Both work for Canadian organizations that advocate and support people who've become parents through methods other than giving birth. Such people already get the standard 35 weeks of parental leave offered through employment insurance, but they do not get the 15 weeks of maternity leave that's reserved only for those who give birth. Murphy says that's not right because adoptive parents need just as much time to develop an attachment with their children.
So we need to call this what it is. It's a 15-week attachment leave for children and youth who join their permanency families. And they need that in order to try to build the attachment. So we're just trying to lengthen that period of time, right? So that every family is treated equally in Canada. And that's really what it's about.
This is not a new idea.
When parents have children, they get the time they need to adjust to parenthood, to learn and to spend those precious moments with the new members of their family.
It was part of the Conservative election platform under leader Aaron O'Toole in 2021.
Merci! Merci, mes amis!
It was also a Liberal campaign promise in 2019. The idea was even put into a Conservative private members bill earlier this year.
And we have had, honestly, a challenging time in the sense that it's been 6 years, but anything worth fighting for is worth fighting for. And this is definitely worth fighting for.
Julie Despatie agrees.
This is my he's now 19, but this is my baby. This is
her children's pictures are scattered throughout her home. All three of them are siblings she and her partner adopted more than a decade ago. At the time, they were 8, 11, and 13 years old.
When you welcome older children, it's not easier. It's actually more difficult because they have a life before you. So who are they to trust you? Like, they're grieving, there's losses, and you need that time for kids to accept that this is their new reality.
And Despatie says part of helping them accept that new reality is always being there for them, which is why the added paid time off is so important. Kathy Murphy, who also adopted 2 children decades ago, hopes this latest development will shine a spotlight on the incredible needs of children looking for a permanent home.
There are many, many children waiting in the child welfare system right across Canada, but many of those children are over the age of 10. Many are teenagers, sometimes living with identified or non-identified special needs, and they would really benefit from living in a permanency family. So I would like to highlight that.
Murphy says right now there are roughly 30,000 children living in care across Canada, with an average of 1,700 per year who find a more permanent parental arrangement. For CBC Radio, I'm Blair Sanderson.
By the way, people who become parents through surrogacy are also now included in the federal government's plan to offer an extra 15 weeks of paid leave. Once the benefit is established, it's expected to cost the government an extra $12 million a year.
I think we underestimate the power of the media to shape our worldviews.
A bold new CBC News documentary that unpacks the news media and its role in the polarization and unmaking of a citizen. From ratings wars, mistrust, and fake news.
We were no longer consuming the same story.
To the politicization of the pandemic, anti-racism marches, and the weaponization of social media.
We are so polarized that we will polarize around absolutely anything.
Big news, now streaming on CBC Gem.
10 to 7 right now, minus 11 in Winnipeg, minus 15 in Brandon, minus 10 in Dauphin and Thompson. Clear in the south and in Thompson, some drifting snow right now. In the city of Winnipeg today, we're going to head to minus 2 with lots of sunshine. And it's a PD day, so if you're a teacher in some different divisions in Winnipeg, you're going to be hanging out, relaxing. Winnipeg 1 is still in class, so but some divisions will have a PD day. I know Shaftesbury High School, Pat was saying earlier this half hour, students will be off once again. Yesterday due to a water main break issue, but today for that professional development. Well, let's continue talking about some of the other things that were in the fall fiscal statement. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland delivered some measures aimed at this country's housing crisis, and we looked at this from a local level. But next on the show, Carolyn Weitzman is here to look at the proposals from a bigger perspective. She's an adjunct professor at the University of Ottawa in the Department of Geography, Environment and Geomatics, and she's an expert advisor to a project funded by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to research solutions to this country's housing crisis. It's called the Housing Assessment Resource Tools Project, and it's focused on assessing housing needs. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what an interesting point of view you have on this. How do you rate the housing measures that you heard in this fiscal statement?
Well, if I was to give it a grade, Marcy, I'd give it a C-. There are a few good ideas in there, but mainly it's repeating a lot of the mistakes that we've been doing for the last few years.
Mistakes like what?
Well, we simply aren't investing in the kinds of housing that Canadians need most. The National Housing Strategy had goals of eradicating chronic homelessness, of lifting 530,000 households out of housing need, paying too much or overcrowded or in poor repair. But the federal government is putting $15 billion into market apartment buildings. Only 3% of those units are affordable to low-income people, and it didn't have any mention of the most successful program, the Rapid Housing Initiative, in terms of a program that's provided 12,000 homes for people who were formerly homeless. So I'd love to see the federal government focusing on what works and focusing on the people who need the most help.
C- isn't a great grade, but you didn't fail the government. So why not? What did you like in this that you think will work?
Well, there's a couple of, there is no doubt that we need to have more purpose-built rental apartments. There are some good signs in terms of lifting the GST off one form of non-market housing, co-op housing, which previously was exempt from the GST rebate that was announced. So that's a good sign. There's $1 billion that's going towards non-market housing. That's great, but it's dwarfed by the $15 billion that's going to market rental. So we need to start redressing 30 years of neglect of non-market housing across Canada, during which almost no co-ops, public housing, community housing was built. And also during that period, we saw the growth of homelessness, mainly because we aren't building housing first, as it's called.
We had some discussions this week with people who are involved with short-term rentals, the head of the group in Manitoba, like Airbnb and other types of short-term rentals. Just for people that might have missed some of that, what will change, and what do you think the impact will be in terms of the housing picture we're talking about?
Right. So there are thousands of short-term rentals, which are definitely one factor that's crowding out the affordable rental market. The fall economic statement tries to get at short-term rentals through tax measures, which is good and important. Another program that could help renters would be a short-term rent bank. About 6% of Canadian renters were evicted between 2016 and 2021, and many of them were evicted for amounts as low as $50 or $100. So being able to provide short-term loans to prevent evictions would be a much more immediate way to help renters who are in distress. Another way to help renters who are losing their affordable housing would be an acquisition strategy where governments or nonprofit providers would buy up affordable housing that's at risk of being lost. And then third way is that the federal government could at least recommend to provinces that they enact rent control in a time of rapidly rising rents. That happened in the 1940s, where the federal government imposed rent control during World War II and kept it going while there was a shortage after that, and again in the 1970s.
And we have aspects of rent control here in Manitoba already, but you're talking about, we're looking at nationally. Manitobans might not realize that we have some different rules here around rents. Just before you go this morning, because I actually haven't discussed this much, what changes for mortgage holders as a result of the government measures this week that were announced?
Yeah, so this allows the guaranteeing of mortgages for longer periods of time for people who may be renewing and who may not be able to renew under the current rates. So it definitely is a short-term aid to the third of Canadian households who are mortgage holders, and that's really important. But another third of Canadian households are renters. They're 3 times as likely to be low income and in unaffordable housing. So it's great for the third of mortgage holders who may or may not be underwater at the moment. But again, it would be great to see more being done for low-income renters.
Carolyn, thank you very much for your perspective.
Thank you very much, Marcy.
Carolyn Weitzman is an adjunct professor at the University of Ottawa, and she's an expert advisor to a project funded by CMHC. They're researching solutions to the country's housing crisis. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells is in with a news update.
Good morning. Well, we are learning more about the hockey coach facing 15 charges, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. Winnipeg School Division confirms Madison Baluch worked as a sessional on-ice instructor at Churchill Hockey Academy during October and November of 2022, several months before she was the head coach of under-18 AA Rocky Mountain Raiders based in Okotoks. We're going to hear the latest about that. And the Manitoba Book Awards is taking a temporary pause to deal with some challenges. Manitoba's biggest night for books offers about 10 prizes every year, except the 2023-24 award cycle is going to be used instead to restructure and confront financial and managerial challenges. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Traffic, good times, no problems. 788-3093. If you do spot something, often as soon as I say that, someone calls. It's minus 11 in the city of Winnipeg. Your high today is minus 2, and we're going to have a sunny, breezy day here in the city. In the next hour of Information Radio, as mentioned, we're going to talk to a city councillor about Winnipeg Transit's master plan, find out what changes riders can expect in their near future, changes that can't come soon enough. So we're going to hear more from you as well. We have been hearing all week on the listener line people's transit issues out there, lots of them. In addition, in the next hour of the show, it starts with a knock at the door, but it ends with vulnerable people losing their homes. Marketplace host David Common joins us to talk about a scam that is targeting seniors and who is allegedly behind it, and why police are calling this a widespread, elaborate scam. So you don't want to miss that. That's right after 7. I'm Marcy Markusa. Pat Kanuga is going to be taking over the show. I'm going over to the Ukrainian Labor Temple, 591 Pitchford for the light wild blueberry pancake breakfast. We'll talk more about that as well as we switch seats. But you stay with us right here on CBC 89.3 FM. Coming up, the latest on what's happening with that potential hostage release today.
The driveway, and there is a torrent of water that has taken out the driveway.
Many Canadians have lost their homes to storms, floods, and fires in recent years, and some say that dealing with insurance companies has been a nightmare, and that hiring what's called a public adjuster has been the only way out. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. The temporary ceasefire in southern Gaza appears to be holding, and humanitarian aid is starting to arrive in the territory. In about an hour, 13 Israeli hostages are due to be freed. So are 39 Palestinians imprisoned in Israel. And if this carefully negotiated event goes well, the ceasefire is expected to last 4 days. The CBC's Briar Stewart has the latest.
In southern Gaza, people are on the move, on foot and in cars loaded with whatever personal belongings they have. The pause in fighting means that those who live in the south and have been displaced can return to their neighborhoods, but those from the north cannot return. Israel's military dropped leaflets warning Palestinians that the north of Gaza is still a war zone and going there is prohibited.
This place here is an unmistakable tension.
James Elder is with UNICEF and has recently arrived in Gaza, where health officials say more than 14,000 people have been killed in the past 7 weeks.
They need, of course, a respite from the bombardment, but people here are desperate. There is an absolute need for people to get their most basics, starting with water.
The United Nations Refugee Agency for Palestinians says it will try to bring aid to the north. But another aid group told CBC News that it's been told staff won't be able to access the tens of thousands of residents still in and around Gaza City. Meanwhile, in Israel, the families of 13 of the hostages are preparing to be reunited, while other families are waiting to be told whether or not their loved ones will be on the list for release. After the first group of hostages has been freed, 39 Palestinians, 24 women and 15 teenage boys will be released from Israeli prisons and returned to their homes in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Tel Aviv.
The Israel-Hamas war is, of course, having repercussions throughout the region. The violence has spilled into northern Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. With more on this, we reached freelance journalist Rebecca Collard in Beirut. Rebecca, is today's pause in fighting likely to affect the ongoing concerns about any potential regional escalation?
You know, this agreement, to be clear, is between Israel and Hamas. This agreement essentially only really applies to Gaza. Hezbollah is not a part of this agreement. None of the various groups that consider themselves part of this axis of resistance, so Iran, militant groups in Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah here in Lebanon, or the Houthi rebels in Yemen, are part of this agreement. So what we have heard, however, so far, John, is that Hezbollah unofficially has said that they will abide by this agreement as long as Israel does, so that they will not fire unless Israel fires. And I will say, you know, it has been quiet so far on the border here, John. This morning, after a real uptick yesterday in violence, we saw some of the heaviest exchanges of fire we have seen since October 7th on this border here yesterday. We also saw an uptick in attacks against U.S. targets in Iraq and Syria. So, you know, I will say Iran's foreign minister was here in Beirut this week, and he issued a fairly stark warning. He said if this ceasefire does not hold, that there will be a widening of this conflict. And that really gives you an idea, John, about what's at stake, not just for Gaza in this ceasefire holding, but also for the entire region.
Rebecca Collard in Beirut. Thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
1 year after the death of a man in Moncton made headlines across Canada, Luke Landry's mother is speaking out. She says her son's death prompted New Brunswick's government to make a lot of promises, but she maintains very little has been done to address the addiction and homelessness crisis. She spoke to the CBC's Alexander Silberman.
We've been done, victims of the system. Mary McDonald wants people to remember her son as more than a homeless person. Bad impersonation of Adam separation. Luke Landry was a rapper, a Christian, and the father of 2 girls. He also struggled with addiction to opioids. Last November, on the day he was released from provincial jail, he overdosed at a safe injection site. He was revived, but frontline workers were unable to find him a bed for the night. Hours later, Landry was found dead in a public washroom. His mother, Mary McDonald, says the image haunts her.
It's him lying in a bathroom, dying by himself. That didn't have to happen.
The New Brunswick government promised to improve supports for people who are homeless. McDonald says 1 year later, she feels the gaps remain. And Debbie Warren agrees. She's the executive director of Ensemble, a charity which operates a safe injection site.
We spend a lot of time making calls and trying to maneuver through the system on behalf of the people we serve.
The New Brunswick government did not make anyone available for an interview. A 24/7 emergency shelter is expected to open in Moncton December 1st. McDonald says that's the first concrete improvement she's heard since her son died. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Moncton.
Canadian and EU leaders are meeting in St. John's for their annual summit. Formal discussions begin today, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau used last night's more informal gathering to announce Canada's participation in a multi-billion-dollar research and development initiative. Chris O'Neill-Yates has more.
Traditional music and snacks, craft beer were on offer as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau opened the summit to a room full of delegates, politicians, and business people.
This is about some of the best of friends in the world, rolling up our sleeves and working together to build a better future.
Trudeau says Canada will join Horizon Europe, a $130 billion research and development fund. There will be promises to strengthen trade, including a deal to sell Canadian water bombers to Europe. This region was chosen in part to showcase how it can help Europe find an alternative to Russian oil and to meet its climate targets. Premier Andrew Furey.
We have all the key ingredients for hydrogen to be distributed worldwide, in particular to Europe.
Businessman John Risley is planning to build Canada's first wind-powered commercial green hydrogen and ammonia project in Western Newfoundland. He said EU countries need to step up.
Not with support for us. We're not looking for a dime, but support for hydrogen users and energy users in Europe to switch to green.
The real business begins this morning with a joint statement later today on what they've agreed on. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, St. John's.
The holiday shopping season is underway, with many retailers hoping to lure shoppers with Black Friday deals. The sales strategy started in the U.S. but has become popular here. But as Canadians struggle with economic uncertainty, retailers are facing a challenge to get us to spend. Anis Hadari reports.
And do you want protection on this?
At this American Target store, shoppers are taking advantage of the country's traditional post-Thanksgiving sales, otherwise known as Black Friday. Except these sales started days earlier.
That's okay. Thank you, though.
Retail experts are saying consumers are more sensitive to price these days. And retailers in both the U.S. and Canada have responded by discounting even earlier than Black Friday.
I feel like the sales have been running for about a week.
Susanna Kollick is Managing Director of Retail Strategy with Accenture Canada. She says usually you need to act fast to catch a deal, but that could be changing.
What we tend to see is following Black Friday and Cyber Monday, there does seem to be a pulling back on some of those discounts, but because of the economic climate, brands are continuing to reevaluate the right price point.
Economists are watching too, but not for deals per se.
Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales will be a true sign to us as to whether or not people are still spending.
Carrie Freestone is with RBC.
We do expect that sales will definitely be a bit weaker this year because gifting is obviously a discretionary item.
She says this isn't entirely a surprise.
If we have decades-high inflation and rapidly rising interest rates, that will result in a pullback in consumer spending, right? That's only rational.
So Black Friday may not have retailers seeing as much black in the books this year. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
And finally, that standing ovation in the House of Commons was for Conservative MP Len Weber. His private member's bill passed into law 2 years ago, and now in Ontario and Nunavut, becoming an organ donor is just a matter of ticking a box on your tax return. Yesterday, National Revenue Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau revealed a lot of people have signed up.
The most recent numbers we have indicate that 2.45 million people used their tax return to indicate they want to be a donor. It shows we can do great things when we work together.
And is expected to keep rising as other provinces and territories add that box to their tax forms too. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. Good morning, Winnipeg. Happy Friday, or Friday, as our friend Abby Adiemi here behind the glass calls it. Welcome to Information Radio for this Friday, November 24th. It is Pat in for Marcy. She was here. Now she's not. She's going off to host the Light breakfast, the annual Wild Blueberry Pancake Breakfast that raises money for Light, local investment towards employment. We will be speaking with her about that, we hope at around 7:35 if she is there on time. But coming up in this hour of the show at about 7:50, we're going to speak with a city councillor about Winnipeg Transit's master plan. Find out what changes bus riders can expect in the near future, and it does need some changes. That's at 7:50. But we'll start off this hour with a start. It starts off with a knock at the door, but ends with vulnerable people losing their homes. Marketplace host David Common joins us to talk about a scam that's targeting seniors and who is allegedly behind it. That's coming up in just a few minutes. But right now at 7:11, let's go to the newsroom. Heather Wells is standing by with some news headlines.
Good morning. Well, the fighting between Israel and Hamas is on pause, as we've been hearing on World Report. A 4-day ceasefire to allow humanitarian aid in and some hostages out. Here in Winnipeg, Gustavo Zettner at the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg says this is a time to pause and reflect on the value of human life above everything else. Zelina Zeid, a Palestinian Canadian in Winnipeg, wants a complete ceasefire. She says we don't need a pause, we need it to end. So we'll hear more from them coming up. And Winnipeg City Council has voted to change the zoning bylaws, thanks in part to the promise of $192 million in federal housing funds. Council voting 13-3 in favor last night of changes to fast-track higher density housing. We're going to hear why one councillor calls it terrible for neighbourhoods. Our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells on the news desk, of course, here at CBC Manitoba. At 7:12, let's see what's happening in weather and traffic. Adi Abiemi is here. Adiemi, good morning, sir. I've known you for a while. I can say your name right.
Happy Friday, Pat.
And to you.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I love that. Hey, before we get into weather and traffic, we haven't talked about this yet. It's Black Friday. It doesn't seem to have the same kind of oomph it used to.
You know, Pat, I got in this morning and the first question I asked is today Black Friday? Because I'm not really feeling the buzz. You know, before now, like let's say 3 years ago, you're going to get people preparing to go shop and tell you.
Go line up at 7 in the morning.
And then we're going to get news feeds that this place is like filled up and people are waiting to rush in. But nothing on. I did not hear any.
You know, I think it's because the Black Friday sale started 2-3 weeks ago. I'm still getting a lot of flyers in my newspaper and stuff about
it started
that.
2-3 weeks ago, but people are broke. Let's not forget that.
There is inflation and people are broke. That's a good point.
All I'm just doing is browsing the internet and like, oh, that's a good deal. That's a good deal.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year, exactly.
All right, let's see what's happening in weather and traffic.
Let's talk about weather. Currently in Winnipeg, right now in the downtown, we are at -11 at the Fox. Today it's going to be sunny. The wind will be gusting 30 to 50 near noon, and then we'll be heading to a high of -2 today. Tonight will be clear, and we'll drop to a low of -10. For Brandon, good morning. How are you doing today? You are currently at -16. Today will be sunny in Brandon. The wind will also be gusting to 50 this morning, but you will be at a high of -3, and the wind chill will feel like -27 this morning. So I think we're getting to that part where you get to bundle up, Pat.
Yep, I noticed it yesterday with the wind chill. I was doing some work outside, and that was a chilly wind.
Yeah, it's not that part of the year you spend a lot of time outside anymore. Thompson, good morning. You are currently at -9. There's going to be increasing cloudiness, 30% chance of flurries this afternoon. And the wind is actually west 30 kilometers this morning. You'll be heading to a high of -2. Tonight will be cloudy, 30% chance of flurries still. And then you will drop to -9. Nothing in traffic yet.
It's been a quiet week with traffic.
I think the traffic line is kind of cold. It's just trying to adjust to the season. So nothing really. And then remember, lots of construction in the city is like rounding up, except
there's much less construction now.
Except the places you have like new buildings popping up. That's where you'll find a bit of hold up.
I have been wondering how busy McPhillips, Salter, and Maine are with the closure of the Arlington Bridge. If you're out and about and you want to give us a call, just if you want to let us know that, it's taking me 10 minutes longer to get to work or even more, give us a call, 788-3093. Abby is standing by at the traffic line. 15 minutes after 7 o'clock, you're listening to Information Radio. It's Pat in for Marcy. And up first on the show this hour, vulnerable people have been losing their homes in Canada in what police describe as a widespread, elaborate scam. With many properties at stake and dozens of people involved, CBC's Marketplace has been investigating this problem. And Marcy spoke with Marketplace's David Common about this story.
Good morning.
So who's connected to this scam?
It is huge. And I'm going to start with the victims. We know of dozens, but it is quite likely hundreds, maybe beyond that. They are typically older. Some are blind. Others can't read or write. Some have mental capacity issues. In short, they are vulnerable. They also all own their homes, and now they're at risk of losing them because of this scam. Also being connected into this are mortgage brokers and lawyers and financing companies. And we've looked at one guy in particular. His name's Anas Ayub. On social media, he talks all about his rags to riches story, that he was as a teenager riding around on the bus with no money. By 22, he was living in a lavish penthouse driving a Lamborghini. He's 23 years old right now. And multiple lawsuits allege he is a key player in this scam, that he is or was running financing companies connected to mortgages and liens and other claims against these victims' homes, these homes owned by vulnerable people. They're basically saying that he was enriching himself by conning them.
Can you explain how the alleged scam works?
Right. It is very sophisticated and complex. It often begins with a knock at the door, and renovations or equipment are offered, maybe a new kitchen, a new furnace, HVAC equipment. Some of these people are, told, they say that it's not going to cost you anything, that government's going to pay for it, that it's already, it's just covered. Don't worry about it. And so the work happens. But what's really going on is the renovators are being paid with what is like an IOU. It's basically stuck to the electronic record of your house, and it says this person has got all this stuff, and it costs, let's say, $192,000. Well, some months later, other people show up and say, hey, you've got this claim against your home. You got to bundle it as a mortgage, and they'll get you to sign documents. I mean, some people don't even remember signing them, but they get you to sign these documents. But the mortgages are often for 25% interest, hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are people very often who are retired, have no appreciable income anymore. They're going to lose the home. They don't have an ability to pay this back. And so that's what's really striking. That is in a nutshell how this thing works.
What has happened since your initial investigation?
Right. So we're kind of in the second round of this. The criminal investigation continues at this point. We do know, speaking of Anas Ayub, that the cops have gone and seized that Lamborghini. There's video of it being towed away. They also executed a search warrant at the luxury penthouse that he was living in. As far as we know, no one has been charged, but there are a lot of lawsuits pending. There are at least 2 lawyers who have been suspended by the Law Society in Ontario. They may face the possibility of being disbarred. In one of those cases, the Law Society is saying they are significant risk to the public. As for Anas Ayub, right around the time the cops executed a search warrant against his address, it seems he left for the airport. I spoke to Greg Whedon about it. He's a lawyer representing many of these victims.
As far as we know, he's fled the country.
He's not in Canada?
No.
Has the OPP failed here?
The fact that he was able to get out of the country with all these victims' funds at the end of the day, it's just a complete failure.
So the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, they're taking the lead on this because there's so many jurisdictions that got involved. One agency had to sort of take it over, and they're looking into it. They've got an active investigation. They wouldn't talk to us about anything. They wouldn't explain to us how Anas Ayub is no longer in the country. They say it's an active investigation, and they just can't talk about it. We don't have a sense of just how big this is, but it is very big and very complex. And that would make an investigation very, very challenging and time-consuming. Just on the civil lawsuits front, we know there are a lot of people who are named in the lawsuits.
Anas Ayub, what does he say about all of this?
Okay, so he talked to us through his lawyer. He says he continues to be a Canadian resident. I would just point out that doesn't mean he's in the country. We don't know where he is right now. He says he's conducted his business dealings lawfully, that he has not been involved in any scheme, he says, and says any mortgages signed were done voluntarily. But, there are a lot of civil lawsuits. There's this criminal investigation. There's the very good likelihood, particularly on the civil lawsuits, that he'll have the opportunity to defend himself when they come to trial.
What's the solution to prevent this?
I think, there's a couple of things. It is very complex, and it appears that some of the most vulnerable in our society have been targeted. One key thing is, and it's important to remember, if you have someone vulnerable in your life, they should never sign anything at all without first checking with somebody. There are these mortgage documents. Victims don't remember signing them, or say that if they did, they didn't know what they were doing. So it is important just that people don't sign. But there's also a government role here. And so I think about the way in Ontario that these claims have been made against people's houses. They're using this legal tool called a notice of security interest. I'd never heard of it. We'd never heard of it. What is it? It's basically it's kind of like putting a lien against the value of your home, but you don't have to tell somebody that you're going to do this to their home. And so there are questions about whether these nosies, these notice of security interest, should even exist anymore. That victim lawyer, Greg Whedon, thinks they shouldn't.
Just get rid of them altogether. They're completely useless. They're only being used for these types of situations, like for these fraudulent schemes. There's no legitimate reason that these even exist today.
So I would just point out the Ontario government, which has these nosies, has now announced a consultation process to look at how to ensure they aren't used for bad purposes. And I suppose Greg Whedon could get his wish granted. They could just get rid of them.
Thank you for this, David.
Thank you.
David Common is the host of CBC's Marketplace. For the full investigation, watch Housing Heist 2. That's tonight at 8 o'clock on CBC TV and CBC Gem. 7:22, you're listening to Information Radio. It's Pat in for Marcy for the next hour and a half while she is out hosting the Light Breakfast. A little music before sports. Boy Golden is finishing off his first ever headlining tour this week back home in Winnipeg. The 2-month-long tour spanned across the U.S. and Canada. You can find him playing tonight at the Burton Cummings Theatre. I saw him open for Burton Cummings last December. He's quite a talent. This is his latest release. This is Aeroplane Song.
If we had a far away.
song. You can catch him in concert tonight at the Burton Cummings Theatre in Winnipeg. It is 7:25. It's Information Radio that you're listening to. Thanks for tuning us in wherever you are. 89.3 FM, 990 AM maybe, or our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Travis Peterson getting the visuals up along with the audio on our YouTube channel. Check us out. We're kind of doing a soft launch right now, but it is very cool. We're making radio on TV, so to speak, and making radio into TV. So thank you, Travis, for being here this morning. May McKillop is behind the controls as well, while Abby is filling in for me, while Marcy is hosting the light breakfast this morning. At 7:25, it's time for sports now. Scott Regehr joins us. Good morning, Scott.
Happy Friday, Pat.
And to you, shall we start off with Jets? Jets are in Florida tonight, getting some sun against their old coach, Paul Maurice, of course. And boy, at 11-5-2, looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, and they can win for a fifth straight time if they can get by Maurice and the Panthers this evening, Pat. And you look historically at how Winnipeg's acquitted itself against the team coached by their former coach, Paul Maurice. 3-0 thus far. And Mark Scheifele in particular likes playing against Paul Maurice, having scored 5 goals and 1 assist in those 3 games. So I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get going. The Panthers, and of course they went all the way to the final last year, have been mostly really good this season of late anyway. And that's because they've got their 2 best defensemen, arguably, Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, back in their lineup. So it's the Jets are going to be up against a pretty hot team in their own right tonight in Florida.
And then I think Nashville on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, yeah.
What else is making some sports here? We want to go to the Para-Pan Am Games. What's the latest from there?
Well, deja vu all over again, Pat, for Canada's wheelchair rugby team. Just like at the last game, Zach Medell starred for the Canadians, but despite the Albertans' 36 tries, they still came up just short against the U.S. for gold. Canadian teams will have a chance to win titles today against their American rivals in both women's wheelchair basketball and goalball. Charlottetown's Amy Burke, part of that squad that beat Brazil yesterday in the goalball semifinals.
Oh my gosh, this was a hard game. Brazil brought it, and you know what? Sometimes I forgot to breathe during that game. This is where the mental part of it comes in, and holy man, it was hard. So when the horn went, it was a sigh of relief. There was tons of happy tears. It was just, man, it's all surreal. It's incredible.
So Canada versus the U.S. in the goalball gold medal match, and a berth at the Paris Paralympics on the line there as well.
Okay, next in your sportscast, when sports becomes news, financial misdeeds from across the pond in soccer, what's happening there?
Well, those misdeeds, Pat, are said to have been committed by Everton, a club in England's Premier League. In an unprecedented move, the league has punished the Liverpool-based side for breaching financial fair play rules. That punishment is harsh, to say the least. Everton's had 10 points deducted from what they've earned so far in the standings. There's a fear now they could eventually finish in the bottom 3 of the league, which under English soccer rules would see them relegated to the next division down. Everton has not played in that division in more than 70 years, and supporters are furious at the prospect. Dave Kelly is the chair of the club's fan advisory board.
It seems as if Everton Football Club are being made scapegoats for something could be construed as a minor misdemeanour. It appears that the Premier League have attempted to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I'd like to think that all the fans are united as one, and let's show a global, worldwide audience how wronged our great football club is.
When Kelly, and how about that Scouse accent, says the league's using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, Pat, he's talking about an investigation that found Everton had spent about $30 million more on players than it should have. That's peanuts, though, in the world's richest sporting league, and the feeling is Everton's being used as a scapegoat for bigger teams' financial skullduggery. To that end, there are plans this weekend for several protests. In the 10th minute of Everton's home match Sunday against Man United, fans plan chants with expletive-laden phrases about corruption in the Premier League, and there are reports a plane's going to fly over Man City's stadium tomorrow morning with a banner questioning why they haven't been punished yet. City, one of the richest teams in the world and maybe the best team in the world on the field, faces 115 financial fair play charges, but none have stuck yet. High-priced lawyers, you see.
Wow. Well, thanks, Scott. Nice use of skullduggery, by the way. I'm not sure you've used that in your sportscast before. Nicely done.
It was not lost on me that it was in part of my sportscast. Have a great weekend, my friend.
You too, Scott. Take care. That's Scott Regier at the National Sports Desk. Coming up in the next half hour of Information Radio, we've heard a lot from Winnipeggers this week about why Winnipeg Transit isn't working for them. We're going to speak with a city councillor about a plan to fix it. That's coming up in about 20 minutes. The time right now is 7:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It is a chilly start to the day, minus 11 in downtown Winnipeg right now, but we are going to actually warm up above seasonal, a high today of minus 3 under the sun. We begin in the Middle East, where, as you have been hearing on World Report, a ceasefire is now in effect between Israel and Hamas. 8 trucks carrying food, water, and fuel now entering Gaza. This is the first of a 4-day pause in fighting. The pause will allow Hamas to release 13 hostages in the next hour or so, and that will be followed by the release of 39 Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons. Gustavo Zettner, president of the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg, welcomes this development.
It's providing an opportunity for some humanitarian thinking for all of us, not just people involved in this war, not just people that have families either in Gaza Strip or in Israel, to take pause and talk and understand, reflect on the values of human life above anything else.
Selina Zeid, a Palestinian Canadian in Winnipeg, wants a complete ceasefire. She says, "We don't need a pause. We need it to end." You can hear the latest on this story, as well as other national and international news, coming up on World Report at 8. We are learning more about the hockey coach charged by Winnipeg police with 15 offenses, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. Winnipeg School Division confirms Madison Baluk worked as a sessional on-ice instructor at Churchill Hockey Academy during October and November of 2022. Months before that, Baluk was the head coach for the under-18 AA Rocky Mountain Raiders based in Okotoks. CBC obtained a letter from 6 families with concerns about some of Baluk's behavior. The bodies in charge of the Okotoks team now confirm they have submitted a complaint letter to Hockey Canada's independent third body. Signe Arneson at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection wants to see more transparency in youth sports when red flags arise, even if it doesn't hit a criminal threshold.
There are all sorts of areas that, as a parent, you might want to know the type of conduct and previous record that a coach may have had that has nothing to do with criminal record checks.
During Baluk's time as coach in Manitoba, she worked for 2 elite hockey teams and volunteered as a high school basketball coach. None of the charges have been proven in court. City Council has voted to change Winnipeg's zoning bylaws, thanks in part to the promise of $192 million in federal housing funds. Last night, Council voted 13-3 in favor of changes to fast-track higher density housing. It allows developers to build up to 4 units on a single lot and up to 4 stories near busy bus routes. River Heights Fort Garry councillor John Orlico was one of 3 councillors who voted against the changes.
4plexes and the 4 stories, mid-block and bungalows is a ridiculous idea. It's terrible for the neighborhood. It destroys what neighborhoods do.
The federal government says the changes are needed to increase the housing supply while promoting the development of affordable, diverse communities that are low carbon and climate resilient. A bright light in Winnipeg's music scene is about to be extinguished. The Goodwill Social Club is closing after nearly a decade on Portage Avenue. The club's owners say a lack of demand, fewer touring artists, and inflation led to the decision. John Scholes owns Times Changed on Main Street, another small musical venue in Winnipeg. He says the Goodwill's closure will leave a huge gap for aspiring musicians.
Those beacons of light for people who are growing up in our town and wanted something to dream on. They are so few. It gets me a little teary to realize how few there are. And they just become these little glowing memories. And here's another one. And why? Mostly just because of money.
The Goodwill's owners say the club will close its doors in February. And organizers of Manitoba's biggest night for books say it will take a temporary hiatus next year to reorient itself. The Manitoba Book Awards offer about 10 prizes a year. That includes specialized honors devoted to emerging, francophone, and Indigenous writers. But instead of awards, 2023-24 will be used as a restructuring period to confront financial and managerial challenges. Matt Jowdry is an organizer of the awards.
No decision is ever easy when you're involved in the arts, because the arts is one of the most overlooked, underfunded, and underappreciated industries in the country.
And he says authors who would have been eligible to apply for an award this year will not be overlooked. They will be able to apply for the 2024-25 award cycle for the Manitoba Book Awards. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
A lot of chat about online yesterday about the Goodwill Social Club closing down for that live music venue. So that was in Heather's news there just a couple of minutes ago, just down the street from us on Portage Avenue. It is 7:35 right now, almost 7:36. It's Pat in for Marcy. We're going to get to weather and traffic in just a few minutes. But first, why am I in for Marcy? Well, Marcy is hosting this morning the 26th annual Wild Blueberry Breakfast for Light. That's local investment toward employment. She is at the Ukrainian Labor Temple at 591 Pritchard Avenue. Good morning once again, Marcy. You made it there okay?
I made it here okay, Pat. Not only that, but it's actually a beautiful morning. A little chilly, but out the huge historic windows of the Labor Temple, I'm watching the sun rise over Tikona, as we like to say.
That's right.
What a beautiful space this is. Just a reminder to Winnipeggers here, this hall from 1919 really played a critical role back in the general strike. So what a fitting place to talk about employment and workers and how important it is to find work, to feed your families, and to be paid fairly. A lot of people, though, can't even get on the ladder of employment because they just have trouble in their lives for whatever reason, it happens to all of us, that leads them to not be able to get on that first rung. So that is what LIGHT is all about, the organization I'm going to talk about here and what this event's about. LIGHT is LITE, Local Investment Toward Employment. And so this breakfast has been happening for some 26 years to support the different programs that help people get on that first rung toward employment, and also does so much more as well. We're going to hear about that now. Ian Roundtree is with us, Marketing Communications for LIGHT. Hi, Ian.
Good morning.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Good. I am too. There's anticipation around us. Big tables set up, and can smell the pancakes. The doors are going to open soon. We also have Molly Dunbar with us, who's chair of the board. Hi.
Hi.
So what does it feel like for you when you get ready for the breakfast itself, knowing that people are going to come in and knowing, that this support, how critical it is to LIGHT?
It's always kind of felt like a family reunion, honestly. I mean, over the years, especially since COVID, it's been a little smaller these past couple of years, but back in the day, it used to be up to 500 people. We don't have space for that here, but, we'd like to get close. I'm just kidding. I think the capacity is 300, but I think there's still spots for people to come on down if they're interested, because, the pancakes are ready, made by folks who are looking for those opportunities and who are ready to serve you.
So the Ukrainian Labor Temple, I think I neglected to mention 591 Pritchard, and we're just standing sort of at the base of the stage where I'm going to be emceeing it a little bit. There's entertainment, pancakes, learning about the programs, and the doors are going to open here just before 8. You can pay at the door, by the way. Ian, you joined LIGHT Marketing about 6 years ago. What is it that personally speaks to you about the work that they do in Winnipeg that you're proud, to be part of the organization?
So community is a really central part of the work that we do. LIGHT began a little over 26 years ago as a hamper program and grew out of that to employment and training programs. We work with about 25 different partners in the city to give people an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have. Sometimes that just means being able to buy groceries, which is a really important and it's its own challenge these days with inflation being what it is. But in some cases it's things like references for resumes and building your experience or building a network within city, because chances are if you don't know anybody, it gets a lot harder to get a job.
Well, this morning is about celebrating the programs coming together, but it is also about confronting some realities in our community and in our city. People are struggling. You mentioned, Molly, the breakfast has been a little smaller in the last couple of years. We have the pandemic as well rolled into that. What are the greatest needs when you think about the partners that you work with and also the successes you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I also do this work off the board. I work in community, and so It's everything. Like it's really hard to just say a few things because each person, it looks very different based on the person that you're speaking with. And for some, it might be just some small things like childcare or like transportation. How do I get there? But for others, it might be just confidence, and that's a lot harder to put your finger on and figure out how to help because but often getting the opportunity, having someone in their corner saying, we got you, you can do this, you've got great skills, like those sorts of things can really matter a lot. But again, there's sometimes way bigger things than that and things that are more systemic and so this is one place to start, but it's absolutely not the place that we should finish.
There's a lot of that word skills is so scary for people. What their resumes and references, it can be so intimidating. I almost wish that the work world would replace it overall with like, who are you? Everyone has something to offer. So do you want to elaborate on that? I saw you when I asked Molly the question going, oh yeah, great question.
Yeah, so we've seen the focus on this shift in the last couple of years. We talk a lot with our partners and with their participants to make sure that we're supporting them in a way that meets them at their point of need. And, a few years ago, we saw needs like getting security deposits together, getting some education together, sort of moving up in the world and really planning for the future. And over the last few years, with the things being the way that they've been, we've seen the responses to those conversations really come in closer. More immediate needs, paying this month's rent, getting a ride to work today. So that's kind of what we're really hoping to work towards in the future, is getting back out to that point where people are more secure today so that they can actually think about tomorrow. And
it's
that's
kind of like Harvest. It reminds me when we were doing interviews with Harvest, they were working on a lot of sort of bigger career and resource training programs. They still do a lot of that work. But when the pandemic started, needs changed, the world changed. But in Winnipeg, those social problems deepened. They said, we kind of went right back to people need to eat. They went back to the core mission. It sounds like some of the similar things for Light.
Yeah, and those priorities really we work very hard to be directed by community and informed by the needs of the community, because that's the structure that we took originally, 20 plus years ago with the hamper program. Was we wanted the groceries for the hampers that we delivered to come from community sources, and we're working hard to continue that work today.
So just last before we turn it back to Pat in the studio, the doors are going to open. People can come here and enjoy entertainment. Who wants to tell me a bit more about what's going to be coming up and how important this morning is? Molly?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the run of show. We've got some great entertainment, as you said, but also it's just a chance to come together as community. I think I know I need that a lot more these days. It's tough out there, and so just to sit down at a table over some pancakes and meet some people who have believe in these values as well.
I said last question, and then I neglected one question I wanted to clarify here. You mentioned that the people that are making the pancakes are also part of one of the programs. Who's cooking?
We have people here from Spence Neighbourhood Association. We've got volunteers from Assiniboine Credit Union. We've got about 6 of our partners are here, and we'll be talking about that from the stage as well.
So those are the kind of programs we're talking about, all at the grassroots. I call it the grassroots of the grassroots. Ian Roundtree, Marketing Communications for Light, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Molly Dunbar, who is chair of the board, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
So, Pat, doors about to open. I'm going to hit the stage. We're going to have a lovely community morning here. If you've been before, we'll see you soon. If you have not been before, you can come down and join us here. So 591 Pritchard at the Ukrainian Labour Temple here in the heart of Winnipeg's North End. No better place to be on a clear, crisp morning. Come and warm up with the community.
And that goes from 8 till 10:30 a.m., everyone. So get down there if you have a chance. Thanks, Marcy.
You're welcome.
So Marcy is hosting that light breakfast. That's why she is there. I am here, and Abby Adiemi is going to bring us weather and traffic right now, a little bit later than normal, but we had to get Marcy on the air.
I know, since Marcy's there, Barry's and Surrey's, they said the turkeys and the peacocks are already inside, but
Morning,
it's
Barry.
really beautiful out there. Winnipeg is currently 11. We'll be heading to a high of -2 today. Brandon -16, Thompson -9, Churchill -12, Gimli -12, Dauphin -10, Morris -15. You see anything in traffic, let us know, 788-3093.
We are going to talk transit in just a few minutes, but first let's talk cell phones. Many of us are tethered to our smartphones, and we now have a better idea of just how much of a problem it is globally. The CBC's Jason Osler tells us more and why a possible solution may have arrived.
The way Jay Olson sees it, smartphones are still relatively new, and we're all test subjects. We're kind of living in something like a natural experiment.
Olson is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Psychology at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. And one of his main areas of interest lies in how smartphones affect our lives and just how hooked we are.
We started tracking how this kind of problematic smartphone use may be increasing across the world.
Olson is lead researcher for the largest ever look at smartphone addiction. More than 50,000 adults of all ages were surveyed in 195 countries. The results were recently published in the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction. Of note, almost 1/3 of participants would be considered at high risk of smartphone addiction. Another notable result, according to Olson, the consistency of the findings from country to country. Younger people are more susceptible, and particularly women. I hit the streets to ask that particular demographic whether they would consider themselves addicted to their phones.
I definitely have a smartphone addiction. I can't go 5 minutes without reaching for my phone. My screen time is definitely like 8 hours a day. I mostly just try to make sure I put it away when it's time to go to bed and to not like stay up too late on my phone.
I go through phases. There's like certain periods of time where I'm like definitely more addicted. For me, I think the best thing was just like keeping myself really busy. I find that like when I'm alone, that's when I'm on my phone the most.
I don't think you can be addicted to your smartphone in the same way I don't think you can be addicted to oxygen, because you just need them to survive at this point.
A little dramatic to be sure, but it highlights the crux of the matter. Smartphones are fully integrated into our lives now. In some places, such as China, France, and Utah, steps are being taken to impose regulations for young people and screen time, particularly social media. But the beginning of what might be the most important solution may have just arrived. A screenless smartphone called the AI Pin from a company called Humane.
What if devices weren't the experience?
Catch me up. Lucy called and your flight is at 7 a.m.
Tell Lucy I'm on my way.
What if life was?
It's a small, square device that clips to your lapel and can do everything a smartphone does. It was designed by a pair of former Apple employees and allows you to simply talk to the device, which learns as it goes. Co-founder Imran Chaudhry demonstrates.
What's the gate code that Andrew sent me?
The gate code that Andrew sent is 7361.
Before, I'd have to scroll through a long text chain to the last time I went to Andrew's house.
When you need to actually see something, you hold out your palm and lasers display it right on your hand. Now, Jay Olson says it's impossible to predict whether it will be of interest yet to consumers, but says it eliminates the property of a phone that hooks us most.
A lot of the issues that people have in terms of smartphone use stem in part from the screen. And if you remove kind of the most absorbing part of the phone, which is probably the screen itself, then you may have less problematic use of the device.
Olson says changing the actual hardware we use is only a portion of the solution for our smartphone habits.
Whether it's government regulations or the developers themselves changing around how they design these so that they're less likely to keep people kind of hooked on them for a longer period. It's that combination that we would need. Having either of those individually, I don't think will suffice to solve the problem.
Olson says anyone interested in determining how problematic their own smartphone use is can find a short questionnaire and rating at healthyscreens.com. For CBC Radio, I'm Jason Osler.
Thanks, Jason. It is 12 minutes before 8 o'clock. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC. Thanks for joining us this morning. Boy, it's a nice-looking morning out there right now. Sun rises in just a few minutes at 7:52, on the way to a -2. It's -11 right now.
It's a wonderful time of year. A season worth celebrating. A season of giving. A season for kindness. Let's make the season kind for those in need. December 1st, CBC is devoting a day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba. Music, stories, and giving. Make the season kind. Visit cbc.ca/bekindmb for details.
little bit of music from Winnipeg indie outfit Living Hour. That's hard to say goodnight. You heard it here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Good morning to you. It is coming up to, well, we're 7:51 right now, 9 minutes before 8 o'clock. World Report is at the top of the clock. We were hoping to talk about some Winnipeg transit issues right now with Councillor Janice Lukes, just having a bit of a challenge getting a hold of her. We'll try and bring you that interview in the next half hour. Up next on the show, though, this is the last full week of November, and everywhere in our province right now, Manitobans' minds are turning to thoughts of the upcoming winter months. Up in Island Lake, it means that many families have already filled their freezers with meat from the earlier hunting season. When CBC's Corey Funk and Marcy were in Garden Hill just a few weeks ago, they were privileged to see firsthand the prep that follows a successful hunt. And it all happened in the kitchen of an unexpected place.
So we're in the education office, and it's not every day that in an education office you turn the corner into the kitchen and you see a table covered in raw moose. But that's exactly what's going on. It's a special day here. There's in fact 2 moose on the table.
The one I just cut is the tailbone, and this is a hind leg.
How many moose do you think you've carved like this up in your life?
Maybe 1,000.
For real?
For real, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I killed my first moose when I was about 16. Come here, moose.
You've brought the pots.
Yeah.
For the soup, or these for the stew?
Soup.
They've got a handle on top. So are these going outside?
Outside.
Over a fire, like? You always come back and share with community then?
Yes, always. Yeah.
What is hunting and fishing like in this part of Manitoba, around Garden Hill and around Island Lake?
It's pretty good. Like, it's not disturbed by anything, because our elders and the old people never really allowed anybody to, like mining and all that, to disturb our land. That's why our wildlife is still plentiful. It's the old people that they wanted their land to be undisturbed, so their grandkids and the younger generation can enjoy the life we have here. When you use a saw, it doesn't give out bone fragments. When you gotta break it.
How many people is this going to feed? This is going to be quite a feast.
Let's say about 40 people. Traditional food. It's kind of the way we live.
Boil it about 2 hours.
Moose meat, potatoes, and onion. You're in here making the moose stew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to be here all day?
I hope not.
So, who taught you to make moose stew?
My mom. Yeah, I grew up in the bush area.
Mm-hmm. Hi. So I've had moose stew before, but I've never seen it actually made, like right from the hunt, which is so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. You were on the hunt too?
Yeah.
So what happens when you kill the moose?
Sometimes we dress it right away. If it's a bull moose, we just leave it overnight to let it settle down, to get it tenderized. And then we go back to cut it up.
If we skin it right away, the moose meat will be like hard, tough. You have to let it sit like, easy to chew. Most people don't have teeth.
Once we kill a moose, we always cut out the hair at the front side.
It's a beard like.
The moose goatee, what do?
You cut it off.
Yeah.
And then you hang it on a tree, a branch. That's been a tradition for as long as I know.
That was passed on from our elders way back.
And is it to show respect for the animal?
Yeah, to show respect. And also, we have to throw all the leftover bones out on the lake, and then ask the animal to swim by again. And that's one of the things, yeah.
That's so beautiful.
The bones, the leg bones, we have to cut them up and make it for soup. The bone marrow is really good. You have to use every inch of the moose. Done.
And thanks to the people of Garden Hill for welcoming Marcy and Corey and the rest of the crew who were up there a few weeks ago. We heard from Elizabeth Monius, who was cooking, Frank McPherson, who was helping with prep, and hunters Jeffrey Harper and Victor Little. Those moose legs, by the way, were stored for winter, and another community feast will happen around Christmas time. We're coming up to 3 minutes before 8 o'clock. World Report is at the top of the clock. Right now, let's go to the CBC Manitoba newsroom and Heather Wells with news headlines.
Good morning. We're learning more about the hockey coach facing 15 charges, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. Winnipeg School Division confirms Madison Baluk worked as a sessional on-ice instructor at Churchill Hockey Academy during October and November of 2022. Several months before, she was the head coach of the under-18 AA Rocky Mountain Raiders in Okotoks, and CBC has a letter from 6 families in Alberta with concerns about some of Baluk's behavior. We're going to hear more about that. As well, a bright light in Winnipeg's music scene is about to be turned off. The Goodwill Social Club is closing in February. After nearly a decade on Portage Avenue, we're going to hear from a musician about how important the Goodwill was for their music evolution. That's coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It's Heather Wells on the news desk this morning here on Information Radio and CBC Manitoba. Well, coming up in the next half hour of the show...
Canada, this is the nation's music station. Much music, 24 hours a day in stereo.
In stereo. Well, that brings back memories, doesn't it? Well, the Much Music Experience Tour is coming to Winnipeg at 8:15. We're going to chat with former Winnipegger and original Much Music VJ Monica Diol about a documentary that is going to be shown Monday night in Winnipeg. I'm very excited to see that. And it'll be nice to talk with Monica. That's coming up at about 8:15 in just a few minutes. And also, we're hopefully going to talk with Janice Lukes about transit as well in the next half hour of the show. You are listening to Information Radio. It's Pat in for Marcy. She's hosting The Light Breakfast over at the Ukrainian Labor Temple on Pritchard, as you heard just a few minutes ago, with her doing some interviews there. And I should mention that right now we're at a minus 11. It is a beautiful morning. The bottom half of the province is clear. Lots of sunshine. The sun rose just about 6 minutes ago at 7:53. So still more in the show. Coming up at the top of the clock is World Report.
On the 30th anniversary of their legendary album, 5 Days in July, Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler from the band Blue Rodeo will tell you the story how a road-weary rock band found refuge in an Ontario farmhouse and created a Canadian masterpiece. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Many Canadians have lost their homes to storms, floods, and fires in recent years, and some say that dealing with insurance companies has been a nightmare and that hiring what's called a public adjuster has been the only way out. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. Aid trucks carrying fuel and cooking gas have started to enter Gaza. 13 Israeli hostages are due to be freed this hour. And after that, 39 Palestinians are expected to be released from Israeli prisons. The cessation of hostilities is in effect in southern Gaza, but as Briar Stewart tells us, Palestinians have been warned against traveling north.
In southern Gaza, people are on the move, on foot and in cars loaded with whatever personal belongings they have. The pause in fighting means that those who live in the south and have been displaced can return to their neighborhoods, but those from the north cannot return. Israel's military dropped leaflets warning Palestinians that the north of Gaza is still a war zone. and going there is prohibited.
This place here is an unmistakable tension.
James Elder is with UNICEF and has recently arrived in Gaza, where health officials say more than 14,000 people have been killed in the past 7 weeks.
They need, of course, a respite from the bombardment, but people here are desperate. There is an absolute need for people to get their most basics, starting with water.
The United Nations Refugee Agency for Palestinians says it will try to bring aid to the north, but another aid group told CBC News that it's been told staff won't be able to access the tens of thousands of residents still in and around Gaza City. Meanwhile, in Israel, the families of 13 of the hostages are preparing to be reunited, while other families are waiting to be told whether or not their loved ones will be on the list for release. After the first group of hostages has been freed, 39 Palestinians, 24 women and 15 teenage boys will be released from Israeli prisons and returned to their homes in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Tel Aviv.
Today's agreement between Israel and Hamas is the result of weeks of negotiations. Global powers like the U.S. have been engaged, but the involvement from the Gulf state of Qatar has been pivotal. Abby Kugadassan reports.
A small nation playing a big role on the world stage, Qatar has positioned itself as a mediator, this time between the U.S., Israel, and Hamas.
I think it's played an essential role.
Arif Lalani is a former Canadian ambassador to several countries, including Iraq and Afghanistan. He says Doha has been vital because it can speak to actors the West avoids contacting directly.
This pause in the fighting could not have happened if there wasn't a place to go to speak to Hamas, or a country that allowed us to indirectly communicate with them.
But Qatar has been pressured by both the U.S. and Israel to condemn Hamas and criticized for hosting senior Hamas officials for years. With Israel, Doha maintains low-level ties, not official ones. Its emir has previously said Qatar will not normalize relations until peace is achieved between Israel and the Palestinians. For the Gaza Strip, Qatar has sent about $10 million monthly for years. The money helps fund UN food rations and partially pay public sector workers like doctors and teachers. Lalani says these negotiations are a start.
Security is never assured only by focusing on security. There has to be a political framework.
Several Muslim countries have called for a permanent ceasefire and steps towards a two-state solution for an enduring peace. Abby Kugadassan, CBC News, Berlin.
The exact number of Americans kidnapped by Hamas is not clear, but some of them are to be released today. With more on this, let's go to Richard Madden, CBC's correspondent in Washington. Richard, what can you tell us about the Americans being released?
Yeah, there are early reports from the White House that says 3 Americans, 2 women and a girl, are expected to be among those released, including the youngest American hostage, 3-year-old Abigail Moriden. She was captured by Hamas after both her parents were murdered trying to flee their home in South Israel. Now, her American relatives are waiting anxiously for news of her release. Here's her great aunt, Liz Hirsch Naftali.
She's turning 4, and to just imagine that she comes home and is with her family is our light right now.
Now, Israeli troops have reportedly been instructed not to tell her that her parents were killed by Hamas. U.S. officials say once the American hostages are released, their families will be notified.
The stakes are high for the Biden administration in all of this, Richard, with the president himself engaging. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there are huge political ramifications for Biden, especially as we head into an election year. Polls suggest he's losing support, particularly among young Democrats, for his steadfast support for Israel, not so much for the Palestinians. Now, White House officials are careful not to call this vindication, but they say, look at these developments. They say it's proof Biden's quiet diplomacy is working.
Richard Madden in our Washington Bureau. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Oscar Pistorius will be released from prison on January 5th. The former Paralympic champion was granted parole this morning. Pistorius was sentenced to 13 years and 5 months in prison for killing his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. He has spent nearly 10 years behind bars. The parole board says he will have to do community service, attend an anger management program, and will not be allowed to leave a specific area in Pretoria. Officials in Dublin are appealing for calm after a night of rioting. Protesters fired flares and fireworks at police. They burned vehicles and looted shops. 34 people were arrested, and officials are blaming Ireland's growing far right for fomenting the violence after a stabbing incident earlier in the day.
We ask people to act responsibly, not to listen to the misinformation and rumour that is circulating on social media. The facts are being established, and a lot of the rumour and innuendo is being spread for malevolent purposes.
Police Commissioner Drew Harris says his officers need time to investigate why a man stabbed several young children outside a school yesterday. Protesters showed up at the crime scene shouting anti-immigration slogans after it was revealed the suspect was a naturalized Irish citizen who had lived in the country for some 20 years. Those protests grew in size, and the rioting went from there. Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs is being accused of drugging and sexually assaulting a university student in 1991. It's part of a lawsuit filed in a New York court, and the second suit filed against Combs in a week. The complaint is among a flurry of lawsuits filed this week under New York's Adult Survivors Act. Court papers also filed accusing New York Mayor Eric Adams of sexual assault in the 1990s. The act created a year-long suspension of the statute of limitations to sue over alleged sexual assaults. That is ahead of the law's expiry, which is today. In its fiscal update, the Liberal government said it was looking for billions in savings, but a Fifth Estate investigation has discovered Ottawa is doing little to stop the losses of hundreds of millions of dollars through scams run by international fraudsters. They're called carousel scams. Or schemes, rather. The experts say that the government was warned to put in safeguards, but failed to act. Bob McEwen reports.
I feel livid that this is happening in Canada.
UK fraud expert Mike Cheatham is a man with a mission. He says Ottawa must take responsibility for not doing more to prevent your tax dollars from being stolen.
Why are you here in the United Kingdom trying to trace these criminals down?
Cheatham is talking about carousel schemes, where tech-savvy fraudsters from outside Canada set up a series of bogus transactions inside the country. The scammers then claim GST refunds for taxes never paid in the first place.
I believe that the fault here is with the tax authority, and your tax system is wide open for this fraud.
Court documents obtained by the Fifth Estate reveal the Canada Revenue Agency has repeatedly been tricked into paying out tens of millions of dollars. The CRA admits it's identified $1.1 billion related to carousel schemes since 2017.
Huge global organized crime. You're the target.
Danish journalist Bo Elkjær says European governments have done far more to crack down on these crimes. But Canada is just not doing enough.
They found places where they are not yet being investigated and haunted by the authorities, and that would be Canada.
Federal Revenue Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau declined an interview. In a statement, the CRA said they've made significant investments in detecting carousel schemes, and that they aim to prevent and address them as early as possible. Bob McEwen, CBC News, Toronto.
The full investigation, Swindling the System, airs tonight on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television, 9 o'clock, 9:30 in Newfoundland, CBC Gem, or on YouTube. And finally, recapping our top story, we're expecting the first group of hostages held by Hamas to be released at any moment. 13 of them being freed as part of the terms of a 4-day ceasefire agreement. 39 Palestinians also being released from Israeli prisons. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. -10 in the city right now. You're listening to Information Radio for this Friday, November 24th. Coming up in this half hour of the show, we've sure heard a lot from you listeners out there about why Winnipeg's transit isn't working for you right now. We're going to speak with Councillor Janice Lukes at about 8:20 about the transit master plan and what might be done in the short term to fix things. That's coming up in just a few minutes. Up first, though, in this half hour, the nation's music station. The Much Music Experience Tour is coming to Winnipeg. We're going to speak with a former Winnipegger and original Much Music VJ, Monica Diol, about why people still feel such a connection to the iconic music channel. There's a new documentary that is being shown in Winnipeg on Monday night at the Centennial Concert Hall. We're going to hear about it and memories of Much Music. That's all coming up, as well as weather and traffic in just a few minutes. Thanks for tuning us in this morning. But at 8:11 on the dot, let's go to the CBC Newsroom, and Heather Wells is there with news headlines.
Good morning. Well, we are waiting this hour for 13 hostages being held by Hamas to be released under the terms of a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. And as we wait, as you've been hearing on World Report, we're going to hear from some Winnipeggers on both sides of this issue, what they hope comes out of this ceasefire in the Middle East. City Council has voted to change Winnipeg's zoning bylaws, thanks in part to the promise of $192 million in federal housing funds. Last night, City Council voting 13-3 in favor of changes to fast-track higher density housing. I'll be back with some reaction coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, did I say who I am off the top of the show? It's Pat in for Marcy. Where's Marcy, you might be asking? Well, she is hosting the 26th annual Wild Blueberry Pancake Breakfast at the Ukrainian Labor Temple from 8 till 10:30 this morning. Light, of course, is local investment towards employment. If you want some blueberry pancakes, maybe make a donation for those folks. That is happening this morning, and that's where Marcy is. We heard from her last hour from the Labor Temple. So just to let you know why you're hearing, me in here. And now Abby is in for me with weather and traffic.
Yeah, I'm in for you. You're in for Marcy. May's in for me. And Travis
May
is...
McKillop, that's right.
Travis is in for as himself.
And we're doing this soft launch on our YouTube channel. So CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Travis Peterson is there. So we're adding visuals to radio. So we're making TV out of radio on YouTube, and it's really cool. So we'll be talking about something, and he's getting the visuals up there, and we're going to do the bigger launch in January. But if you want to check us out, CBC Manitoba YouTube page.
The next level of new media.
That's right.
Okay, let's talk about the weather right now. Currently in Winnipeg, we are at -10. We'll be heading to a high of -2 later today, and the wind chill will feel like -23 this morning. So you need to bundle up this morning on your way out. Good morning, Brandon. You are at -17. It's going to be a sunny day out there, and your high will be at -3. But the wind chill out there is going to be feeling like -27. And up in Thompson, good morning to you. How you doing this morning? It's cloudy out there, 30% chance of flurries this afternoon, and the wind will be gusting from 30 to 50. So hang on to something, okay? And in traffic, yes, eastbound Logan and Keewatin, there's a stalled semi there. That call came in from Barrie, so you need to approach that area with caution. If you see anything in traffic, feel free to let us know, 788-3093.
Coming up to 14 minutes after 8 o'clock, you're listening to Information Radio. Thanks for joining us this morning. Now, for many of us growing up, Much Music was the channel to watch for all things pop culture. It was dubbed the nation's music station in stereo. And where else could you catch an interview with your favorite rock star, followed by a sneak peek of a new music video or full concerts even in the Much Music Big Ticket? Now, originally dubbed Canada's answer to MTV, the channel quickly created a name for itself. A new documentary is giving fans a behind-the-scenes look into the phenomenon of Much Music. It's called 299 Queen Street West, the Much Music documentary, using never-before-seen archival footage, tells the story of how a scrappy television channel turned into a national phenomenon.
There weren't any studios. You did the shows inside of the workspace.
I realized at the beginning there was nothing that we wouldn't do or play.
There was no script, there was no direction, there was nothing like this in the world.
The very first time I walked into the building, it hit me like, I need to be here.
I was this kid who was this huge fan. Now I'm here, now I'm a part of it. It's just talking about it right now gives me goosebumps.
It was live TV, and as soon as that shot was over, it was halfway to Mars.
And that was a clip from 299 Queen Street West, the Much Music documentary. On Monday evening, there is a special screening of it at the Winnipeg Centennial Concert Hall. And Monica Diol, who you heard in that montage, is going to be here. And she is a former Winnipegger, of course, and Much Music VJ. She shot to fame as host of EC, the Electric Circus. And she's on the line now from Vancouver. Good morning, Monica.
Good morning.
Thank you for
How
joining.
Are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for joining us very early in Vancouver right now. And when I first heard about this documentary months ago, I was excited to see it. You're going to be here Monday. I'm excited to see it Monday. We heard from you in that clip. You said, I knew I had to be there. Why did you have to be there?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll tell you why. Because when I walked in that building, it was one of those moments you never forget as long as you live. I walked in and I was expecting a fairly conservative, staid television studio, what I thought was a TV studio. I walked in and it was this open room with a gazillion people everywhere, and they were all colors, shapes, sizes, ages, looks, as in someone looked like a rocker, someone looked goth, someone looked like a normal person walking around in a hoodie. And everybody was doing something, and it was the energy and the interaction, and it was just energy. It was just bouncing off the walls. And I thought, I've never felt like I belonged.
Wow.
And I walked in that room and I went, wow, I feel like I actually belong here because it's so diverse.
Now, was it...
It was an immediate reaction, yeah.
Was it controlled chaos or just chaos?
Well,
with live television.
Okay. Honestly, when I walked in initially, I thought it was just chaos, and I loved it. Once I experienced it and worked there, it's very controlled chaos, but controlled in a chaotic way. So really, which came first, the chicken or the egg here?
And it was a long way from. Did you not DJ on Broadway's at the Fort Garry? Am I?
Yes.
Right. It was Broadway's way back in the day.
Listen, Manitoba. Okay, I know Manitoba. I was raised in Beausejour, Manitoba, on a grain and dairy farm. I was a DJ at Broadway's in the Hotel Fort Garry. You're absolutely right. While I was going to university, and then I had a bar band, and I played places like Thompson and Brandon, Poirier Prairie. So I know Manitoba from lots of different points of view.
And 299 Queen Street West was a long way from Beausejour.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was a life-changing, seriously, a life-changing moment for me.
Now, Monica, for your time on the channel, what sticks out to you the most out of all the things you did? EC was huge, of course, and pop culture and dance and introducing different kinds of music. What sticks out for you?
Well, I did 3 shows on Much. I did 5 shows, 2 on City and 3 on Much. So I did Facts, I did Rapid Facts every day live, and then I did EC live on Friday nights. So basically, and that then ran as a tape on Saturday and Sunday. So basically, I worked, I was on the air for 10 years, 7 days a week. And I was a workaholic. I lived in that station. I knew that God had handed me a really good opportunity to get my act together to make my life. And so, Pat, I really worked.
Yeah, no kidding.
So what stands out to me is, there's so much because it really was life-changing. But what stands out to me is how lucky I was to be a part of making that kind of television. Everything live, everything just kind of spontaneous, taking a chance and making it work. What stands out to me is how much we connected with people across this country. That all these years later, it still resonates with them is amazing. What stands out to me is that Moses Neimer, the head of our station, changed the way television was done, not only in Toronto and Canada, but in North America. I remember Barry Diller from Fox and Fred Silverman from whatever it was,
NBC,
ABC,
probably.
NBC, yeah. I remember all these guys walking the hallways of 299 Queen Street West with Moses Neimer and watching how we did things. Producers from MTV came up to watch Electric Circus saying, how do you do this? Because we could never do our Club MTV live like this. So then all of a sudden you turn on these shows in America and, there's people standing outside on the street and they're doing a concert and closing off the street to have a pop star do a song. Like, he changed the way television was made.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, Monica, you and I could do a half an hour here, but we've got about 90 seconds left before my next interview. Yes. Sorry, we should have booked you for a half an hour. I'm just wondering, though, as far as when you heard the documentary was going to be made, what did you think?
Initially, I thought, okay, there's a lot. And I will say it's very well done. It's like a concert. It's not like seeing a movie. It's like going to a concert. You all know the words. You all know the song, basically. It's really, really fun. It's loud. The whole crowd reacts to everything. It's not like watching a movie. So what I thought initially is not what I think now. I thought it would be like a movie. It's not. It is an experience, and it's really wild, well done, and everyone should come see it.
And what's it going to be like to be back in the Peg on Monday?
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be me and Rick Campanelli, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Yes, I love Winnipeg, and I love the people there. I love the energy there, so I can't wait to get back to my hometown.
Well, Monica, enjoy on Monday. I hope to see you there because I hope to be there, and I'm looking forward to it. Again, part of many Gen X's and other generations growing up with much music. Thanks for your time here on Information Radio.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. It's Monica Diol, an original Much Music VJ. She will be at the Winnipeg premiere of 299 Queen Street West, the Much Music documentary, Monday night at the Centennial Concert Hall. For tickets, go to 299queenstreetwest.com.
The rise of digital music has changed the rules of the game.
Who's in charge of what we listen to when we don't choose it for ourselves?
Find out who benefits, who gets to pick the winners and the losers.
The market has become really flooded with so much new music.
Take a closer look at what's really going on in today's music industry. Watch the new documentary, Big Music, on CBC News Explore. Stream free on CBC Gem and CBC News app.
Minus 10 degrees. You're listening to Information Radio. Thanks for joining us this morning. Wasn't that a fun stroll down memory lane with Monica Diol and Much Music? Let's look at the weather right now. It is minus 10 degrees. We're brilliantly sunny this morning here in the city of Winnipeg. Nice looking day. A lot of clear skies across southern Manitoba. We're going to get today to a minus 2 from that minus 10 we're at right now. Going to have some wind this afternoon, southwest 20 to 40. And then tonight we'll dip down to a cold minus 10. Tomorrow a minus 1. Tomorrow looks like the best day of the next several. Sunny with late afternoon clouds, but we could see 2 to 3 centimeters of snow Saturday night into Sunday morning. But we'll have a minus 1 tomorrow, a minus 4 on Sunday. But then the temperature is going to fall to minus 9 on Sunday by 3 in the afternoon, and really gusty winds to 50 from the northwest. So it's going to be cold winds on Sunday afternoon. Once again, the city of Winnipeg, it is minus 10 degrees. And if you have anything to report in traffic, give Abby Adiemi a call. He is doing my job while I'm in for Marcy this morning. 788-3093 is the traffic line to reach Abby. Up next on the show, many Winnipeggers have a complicated relationship with Winnipeg Transit. It's cheaper than driving, more environmentally friendly too, but buses often are late and take a long time to get where it leads you to take a long time to get to where you're going. And we've heard about the safety issues on buses for years. Now, yesterday on the show, we heard from Jocelyn Douglas. She's visually impaired. She lives in Winnipeg, and she doesn't have a choice but to take the bus. And here's what she had to say.
The bus says it should take me 17 to 21 minutes to get from my apartment in West Broadway to the Safeway at River and Osborne. Says 21 minutes longest. I have never managed the trip in less than 35 minutes, ever.
Got it.
I can walk to Safeway with my cane, noting that not all the street corners are sounded, so I have to stop, and there's like extra things I have to do to stay safe. I can do it in 23 minutes. So I can walk consistently faster than I can catch a transit bus. That shouldn't be a thing.
So Jocelyn also told us that she finds it hard to get to places on time when she does take the bus. Adding to the transit challenges right now, there's a bus driver shortage and lack of routes going to the outskirts of our ever-expanding city. Janice Lukes is the city councillor for Waverley West and the chair of Winnipeg's Public Works Committee, and that oversees transit. And she's on the line this morning. Hello there, Janice.
Good morning. Good morning, Pat.
Thanks for joining us. When you hear stories like the one Jocelyn told, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
Yeah, it's very... I wanted to hear her yesterday. I think it was yesterday she was on, and I didn't catch her. But yeah, it's not good. It's not what we want to hear.
So why do you think transit is such an ongoing issue in this city? We've heard about this forever. Like I was wondering when I was preparing to speak with you this morning, is our transit in the 1970s, 80s, or 90s?
Well, I mean, it needs to have a good catch up, that's for sure, and that's what we're attempting to do. So one of the biggest problems we have right now, Pat, is we just have a driver shortage. We have a really severe driver shortage. We're short about 80 drivers.
That's a lot, yeah.
That like 80 drivers. And then on the horizon, over the next 2 years, we've got up to 40% eligible for retirement. So that's one of the issues. Transit is addressing that. They've completely reworked how the process of hiring and training drivers. Instead of nine months, it's 9 weeks. It's completely renovated their recruitment process, but the demographics of recruiting and the market for transit drivers has really changed over the last 20 to 30 years. Very few people in the world or in society right now have a job for 20 or 30 years. People are more transient in that they can move to other cities for the same job. There's a lot of reasons.
So Janice, what can we do to attract drivers right now, do you think?
We're doing that. Okay, so here's a couple things. So what we're doing is we've got a transit safety team that's going to come on board. I believe they're starting in the new year. There are concerns about safety on transit. I completely agree. So what the mayor has done is hired an individual who's now recruiting a team, and they're in training right now, and they will be coming on board for some of the more higher problem routes. So that's one thing we're doing. The second thing we're doing is we're in the process of redesigning the routes, all the routes, so that they can deliver high-frequency service. We have that in the Southwest. That was the Blue Line, the Spine, and Feeder. And we're going to do the flip over to all these new routes on June 2025. So what that will mean is the routes will be higher frequency and offer more frequent times that the buses are coming. This is hoping we get drivers, okay?
Right.
So we need the drivers. That's one thing we're doing. We're also, I think by the end of the day today, the transit union will have finished voting on their new contract. We're making it more appealing to hire bus drivers with different benefits, more benefits, increased pay. So we're improving safety, improving pay and benefits.
So Janice, I'm going to jump in here because we just have a couple of minutes left here. But you're talking about things in the transit master plan that it came out again in 2021. So we're talking about 2025. Hopefully, some of this stuff will be implemented.
Yes.
What can we do short term right now to make it better? You know, we heard from again, Jocelyn said she's waiting for a bus. 3 buses pass her. They're either full of passengers or they're out of service. But in the short term, what can we do? Do you think?
Well, we have to keep recruiting drivers. This is our biggest problem. We are sending tentacles into every community organization that we're aware of, and we have to recruit more drivers because that really is the number one problem. We're not operating at full capacity. We're not the only city in Canada that's experiencing it.
Right.
So it's a huge challenge, Pat. Like it is a huge challenge.
So in our last 20 seconds, how confident are you that a lot of these things will be implemented in the next few years and we'll have a transit system we can be proud of?
I'm really optimistic. A lot of good things are going to be happening, but until we get more drivers, you need someone to drive the bus, and that's our biggest challenge right now.
Well, Janice Lukes, I'm sorry our time is short, but thanks for joining us on the show this morning. Appreciate your time.
You're very welcome.
Have a great Friday. That's Janice Lukes, the City Councillor for Waverley West. She is also the chair of Winnipeg's Public Works Committee, which oversees transit. The time right now is 8:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's sunny. It's -10. And we are starting off cold, but we will warm up to -2. That is above seasonal for this time of year. Well, any moment now, under terms of an agreement reached between Israel and Hamas, 13 hostages are scheduled to be released in Gaza. And while we wait, as you've been hearing on World Report, aid trucks carrying food, water, and fuel have been entering the territory. Now, this is due to be a 4-day pause in fighting. Here in Winnipeg, Selena Zeid, a Palestinian Canadian, wants to see a complete ceasefire.
Just a big slap in the face, just because a 4-day pause is nothing. Like, it's not going to help anyone. It's not going to help the people. We don't need a pause. We need it to end.
Gustavo Zentner at the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg welcomes this development. He says it's a time to pause and reflect on the value of human life above everything else. We will have the latest on this story as the hostages are expected to be released any moment now. You can find more right here on CBC Radio. You can also go to cbcnews.ca. We are learning about the hockey coach facing 15 charges, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. Winnipeg School Division confirms Madison Baluk worked as a sessional on-ice instructor at Churchill Hockey Academy during October and November of 2022. Months before that, she was head coach of the under-18 AA Rocky Mountain Raiders based in Okotoks. CBC obtained a letter from 6 families in Alberta with concerns about some of Baluk's behavior. The bodies in charge of the Okotoks team now confirm they have submitted the complaint letter to Hockey Canada's independent third party. Signe Arneson at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection says there needs to be more transparency around when red flags arise, even when it doesn't necessarily meet the threshold of something illegal having occurred.
If you're going to put someone in a position where they're overseeing children, those who are vulnerable, underage, then you need to have the proper systems in place to ensure that kids are protected. And we know that most of the conduct that's inappropriate doesn't hit a criminal threshold.
During Baluk's time as coach in Manitoba, she worked for 2 elite hockey teams and volunteered as a high school basketball coach. None of the charges have been proven in court. City Council has voted to change Winnipeg's zoning bylaws, thanks in part to the promise of $192 million in federal housing funds. Last night, Council voted 13-3 in favor of changes to fast-track higher density housing. It allows developers to build up to 4 units on a single lot and up to 4 stories near busy bus routes. Transcona councillor Russ Wyatt voted in favor, but takes issue with Ottawa's tactics.
I don't recall a time when a federal government has reached so far down into municipal corporations to demand that they do certain things to get certain amount one-time federal money. Is it fair to describe this really as political extortion?
The federal government says the changes are needed to increase the housing supply while promoting the development of affordable, diverse communities that are low carbon and climate resilient. The Manitoba Book Awards is taking a temporary pause to deal with some challenges. Manitoba's biggest night for books offers about 10 prizes every year, but its 2023-24 award cycle is going to be used to restructure to confront financial and managerial challenges. Donna Basil is a writer based in Lac du Bonnet. She says these awards can raise a book's profile.
It might get noticed. That means something to the writers. It means something to other writers. It means something to publishers when they see some book awards or any awards of any kind.
Authors who would have been eligible to apply for an award this year will be able to apply for next year's Manitoba Book Awards. And there will be no more encores for a mainstay on Winnipeg's music scene. The owners of the Goodwill Social Club say they are shutting down after almost a decade on Portage Avenue. Amos Nadler-Smith fronts the Winnipeg band Amos and the Kid. He says the Goodwill played a huge role in his musical development.
It basically took me from playing house concerts and very small concerts to a room with 200-person capacity which is, it's just amazing.
Another Winnipeg club owner says the loss of the Goodwill will leave a huge hole in the city's music scene because there are fewer smaller venues for aspiring musicians to cut their teeth. The Goodwill is set to close its doors in February. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Have
Thank
a
you.
fabulous weekend.
You too.
At 8:35, let's quickly thank our producers, all the people that put this show together. Associate producers Wendy Parker, Corey Funk, Abby Addiemi, May McKillop, Bruce Layden, Chloe Friesen, Dylan Longhurst, Jim Agapito, Issa Kixon, Chidi A. Kuma, Kalkadin Amulu Geta, Sierra Sanders, community reporter Shanley Vidal, YouTube producer, Travis Peterson, and producers Margot Watt, me, and Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer of current affairs, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio. I've been in for Marcy this morning while she hosts the light breakfast. Abby Addiemi, quick last word to you.
Yes, Winnipeg, we will be at 11. It's going to be a sunny day in Winnipeg and Brandon, so enjoy the day. But look out for the wind gusts.
The wind gusts, that's right. And a shout out to Justin Jones, who's watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. In the chat, he said hello. So again, we're just kind of doing the soft launch now. More in January, but you can check out this show, Information Radio, on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel.
Pat, quick question for you.
Yes.
What constitutes a good deal since it's Black
Because
Friday?
it's Black Friday, a real rock bottom price?
Like how low?
Like, I don't know, 70% off?
I want one rock bottom and a free stuff.
You want...
That's a good deal.
That's a good deal. If you're out there shopping on Black Friday, take it easy out there, everyone. You've been listening to Information Radio. Have a fabulous Friday. The Current is up next.